I think I know what to do. 1 second. Don't picnic, chat. That was me. There we go. Much better. Yeah, no, we definitely want full color range for this. Alright, not a whole lot going on in the main menu because it's just base Sons of Liberty US release. As I said, the very first version of the game to be released. So we got some differences with, obviously, with Substance. Also, between Substance and HD edition, you might be more familiar with. And even then, between the original HD collection and the new Master Collection, there's a whole bunch of, basically every time these games get re-released, they lose some content. There's something wrong with them. um, so the PS2 version is actually the best way to experience all the content and stuff. We've got these articles here. I wonder if it lets you read In the Darkness of Shadow Moses before you play the game. Maybe? No, because it spoils shit about the game too. But it's largely a recap of MGS1 from Nastasia's point of view. But before you see that, you get this article. Ooh, In the Darkness of Shadow Moses, the unofficial truth. This is a review of it. It's not the book itself by George Franklin. We'll go through this real quick. It's 11 pages, but look, these pages are really short. Some topics in the recent American past have the immediacy and power that still engage our collective imagination. Names like Grassinol or Roswell roll off our tongue with deliberateness reserved by most other nations for holy lands. With this new non-fiction account from Nastasia Romanenko, Shadow Moses, the scene of a nuclear siege 2 years ago, is set to join their ranks. Non-fiction. Official history states that the takeover of a nuclear weapons disposal facility on a lonely outpost in the Fox Islands, Alaska, was the work of a radical right-wing group. Their demands for the release of group members incarcerated in federal penitentiaries were never met, and the incident was speedily resolved by the successful deployment of a commando unit. BS, the author asserts. Romanenko says that she served as an advisor to the Nuclear Emergency Search Team and deconstructs what she claims to be a cover-up story by the government with precision. According to the author, Shadow Moses Island was nothing less than the U.S. Army's testing grounds for a top-secret weapon known as Metal Gear Rex, an all-terrain bipedal tank with advanced nuclear capabilities. As for the facility's takeover, Romanenko alleges that it was the U.S. military's own shadowy wetworks force, known as Foxhound, that staged an armed insurrection in a bid for Rex's possession. The government responds to this crisis by sending in a lone operative, a former Foxhound member known only by the codename Solid Snake, into Shadow Moses. His infiltration is aided by a remote mission control team consisting of an unidentified Colonel Campbell, a Foxhound medical chief Naomi, a radar and electronics expert Mei Ling, supposedly a teenager, and the author herself. Once on the island, Snake joins forces with Metal Gear's developer turned prisoner Otacon to eradicate the weapon of mass destruction. Among the other remarkable characters that make an appearance in Romanex's expose is another Foxhound commando, revolver virtuoso called Shalashaska, aka Revolver Ocelot. One of the most controversial allegations in this book deals with this figure's connection to a disavowed Russian militia led by a Colonel Lukovich. Romanenko paints a bleak picture of a thousand-strong, highly disciplined army with nuclear weaponry operating covertly within the American border. Even more irresistible to conspiracy scholars and students of recent history is their thinly veiled suggestion that the whole affair was planned from the beginning by certain forces inside the US government. U.S. Army and the usual suspect of federal agencies have issued a statement denouncing the book as complete fabrication. However, with a number of detailed eyewitness accounts that back up the author's assertions cropping up daily on the web, the denials serve more to enhance the book's growing reputation. Shadow Moses is an engrossing read for casual and serious readers alike. It promises to involve readers in a meaty debate over the truth of the matter for many years to come. Excerpt from the literary review column, All Booked Up, New York Mirror. Ooh, what's this game? Looks cool. Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid VR missions. Available now. Whoop! Is Twitch derping today? Then you got the shocking conspiracy behind Shadow Moses, which is still not in the darkness of Shadow Moses. Gary McGolden, the guy who this guy, they should make a spin-off of this guy's adventures. Going back to Shadow Moses in a fucking tuna disguise. The island of Shadow Moses lies due north of Alaska's Fox Islands, deep in the Arctic Circle. Above one of its rocky cliffs stands a cabin normally used for meteorological surveys, and it was here that I found myself, seated in a chair with my hands bound behind my back and a burlap sack covering my entire head. A blizzard rages outside, and the cabin was a dark, silent patch somewhere inside the storm. I could sense at least 4 men around me. They had been interrogating me for what felt like hours now. The burlap sack is pungent, with traces of coffee beans, and the biting cold of the cabin. Images of Brazil come to me unbidden. Alleys clothed through the vivid, untended profusion of flowers. Children with skin like frothy chocolate, sunshine capable of burning out the cornea, erupting between palm fronds. I can feel my senses starting to fail. The man in front of me asks for the second or the 100th time. I'm going to ask you again. What's in the optical disc? Told you, I don't know. I just found it, okay? You're lying, you bastard. A fist explodes into the pit of my stomach, bringing up a peanut butter sandwich of many hours ago. Hey, that's what I had this morning. Along with the rusty taste of blood. The relentless beating and numerous knife cuts of the past hour have my whole body screaming with pain, but I refuse to tell them what they wanted. I had too much invested at this point. Too many days of dangerous investigation into the story of a lifetime. There was no way I was going to give it all up at this point. That's enough. A voice spoke from somewhere in the back of the cabin. We have the disc back. Just get rid of him so we can get out of this place. Even in my current sorry state, I was still a journalist. He had said, we have the disc back. That meant that my hosts were the original owners of the optical disc. The last piece of the puzzle was in its place. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything recorded on the disc was true, and that the conspiracy I had suspected did in fact exist. At that moment, I heard a window shatter. The raging storm outside seemed to gain entry to the cabin in an instant, and I heard the thin screams from the captors that encircled my chair. The next second, they had already fallen heavily onto the floor. The brief confusion ended before I regained enough presence of mind to even panic. Whoever was now here, whatever had happened, my tormentors were obviously out of commission. but now I could hear measured footsteps approaching across the floor. If this person had just saved my life, who was it? Or was I about to share the other's fate? The footsteps came to a halt in front of me, but strangely enough, I did not feel any sort of presence nearby. The burlap sack was slowly lifted from around my head, pulled off by an unseen hand. The stinging night air cooled my face, and my eyes gradually regained focus in a darkened room. I could finally see who it was that stood before me. Just out of the sight of most of its citizens, a massive conspiracy determines the working of this nation. Weapons of mass destruction secretly developed by the military. Super soldiers re-engineered into war machines through genetic manipulation. A killer virus that only targets specific individuals with deadly accuracy. Tanks that walk rather than roll and carry a nuclear payload. A covert organization, the third and the most powerful political party, my encounter with which landed me in this chair in the Alaskan winter. Should we maybe put some music on? Some mood music for this? Hold on. I should have thought about this sooner, but whatever. Yeah, let's do that. Also, rip my vocal cord parasites. But whatever, we gotta do this. Maybe this? All of these are a part of the truth I found sealed within the optical disc, and I intend to share what I have learned in the pages to follow. Maybe we'll make it a little wider. Yeah, that should work. That includes everything I now know about our government and the secret arena where an even greater power pulls the strings. This is the truth many have glimpsed but never dare to talk about. How are the volume levels, guys? Everything detailed in this book actually happened, and after I lived it, my world was no longer the same safe place I knew. Neither, I promise, will be yours if you have the courage to keep going. It all began a month ago. I'm gonna need some water for this. Okay. The postman rings. A month before my dramatic escape from death in Shadow Moses, I was having late breakfast in my apartment in New York. Ever since an alien abduction episode in my childhood, I'd been plagued by persistent ringing in my ears. A large patch of mud was my undoing. I slipped, fell, and was knocked unconscious. When I came to, it was already dawn. Later, I was trying to see the bump on the back of my head in the mirror when I saw IT instead. Or I saw it instead. A small hole about the size of a pinprick had been made behind my ear. You learn a little something when you watch as much TV as I did. There was no doubt that I had been abducted by a passing UFO and had spent hours while unconscious with alien beings. Unfortunately, no one in the area recalled seeing a UFO, and not a single person had the sense to listen to my story. Hold on, let me make this a little quieter again. I realize now that this was the day I decided to uncover the truth for a living and become a journalist. But back to the present day, it turned out that my ringing wasn't in my ear, but from the doorbell. The thing shrieked somewhere south of Barrington Bat sonar, barely within the range of human hearing. Blamed the mangling it took from a particularly displeased visitor. Outside the door was the mailman, and in the mailman's hand was a thick manila envelope. On the envelope was a label addressed to me. A letter bomb. I pressed my ear against the envelope and concentrated hard, but not a tick from the thing. Of course, no one uses analog watches in bombs these days. That's why they call it digital age. In fact, why would there even be a watch in a letter bomb? The point is that the unlucky recipient who opens it and the bomb goes off. Which means that it's actually the completely silent envelopes that are dangerous. I knew that opening that flap would send my eggs to the big omelette in the sky. But you don't get to be an investigative journalist for thinking inside the box. I tore through the bottom of the envelope and said, "No." The contents of the suspicious envelope dropped to the floor with lightning speed. In this world, you can never be too careful. Let this be a warning to you, readers. When circumstances compel you to open an envelope from the bottom, turn it upside down first. As a rule, I discovered, objects fall down, and this is what happened to the contents of my lethal envelope, straight down into a half-eaten depth of a delivery pizza forgotten on the floor. I don't recall when exactly this food item arrived on these premises, but the thing was definitely a museum piece by now. Fortunately, it wasn't a bomb, but an optical storage disc, now liberally smeared with peanut butter. The disc was the kind that comes in a clear plastic casing, through which the rainbow sheen of a particular unit shone. I gazed into it a while, thinking of the UFO from the fateful day. Anyway, I fished the optical disc out, noting the lack of a label. Quick wash at the sink got rid of the crud it had accumulated. Oh my god, he fucking put the disc in the water. This is not the document yet. There's a couple articles and this guy's adventure about it before the document. Sorry, I thought you asked about the Darkness of Shadow Moses. Now, this is an MGS2. It's a couple articles before In the Darkness of Shadow Moses. Maybe I should have announced that we were gonna do a reading first, but whatever. We're in depth. I can't believe this fucking guy washed the disc in the sink. A quick wash at the sink got rid of the crud it had accumulated. The disc was drying by the window as I hunted through the now harmless envelope for clues. A single sheet of Xerox paper was stuck to the inside, and it read, "From the desk of Max Smithson, Editor-in-Chief Mega Surprise Magazine. I'm mailing you this optical disc that was sent to the edit department. It's right up your alley. See if you can turn up something more. We'll do a book if you get enough stuff together. This is your chance for a comeback, so don't screw it up. Max is an old friend and used to manage most of my book deals way back when. We hadn't seen each other much since I gave up writing. Not that he has the right to tell me about comebacks and screwing up, but I find myself growing excited by the prospect of writing another book. There was a problem, and it was a big one. How the hell was I going to get to the disc's content? Hold on, guys. Let me just announce that we're doing a reading. Most people don't even have any fucking clue that this stuff exists, because As the legend says, nobody reads. Alright. Ooh. The shocking truth within. My next door neighbor is a starving college student, and I hit him up for the use of his computer now and then. I banged on his door and screamed repeatedly until he shuffled up to the door half asleep. Hey, that's me right now. Once inside, I made a beeline for the piece of junk and stuck the disk inside the drive. The icon appeared on the display with a gentle whir. The file name read, "In the Darkness of Shadow Moses." But an urgent click on the icon only brought up an error message. What nefarious scheme was this? What secret encryption was preventing me from accessing the data? I clicked again and again with the same result and started to gnaw at the keyboard in frustration. The starving student came running over, wailing about his equipment. He typed in some Moonman language. Avoiding patches of my spit and a frighteningly cheerful application startup screen appeared on the display. Then lo and behold, I finally laid my eyes on the dense mass of text, the contents of the disk. At the very top it read, "In the Darkness of Shadow Moses" by Nastasia Romanenko. The starving student was being scholarly and trying to read the text over my shoulder. I knocked him out with a punch to the solar plexus and devoured the file's content. This is fucking amazing. He did what now? It was like a blow to the head with a frozen tuna. My brain was reeling from shock. The file was full of wild stuff. Top secret conspiracies, incredible genetic experimentation, cold-blooded military development of classified weapons. This was the most incredible stuff I had ever come across. The unofficial facts according to the disk. Most readers should be aware of the series of strange military actions involving an island farther north of Alaska's Fox Islands, some 2 years ago. The island was called Shadow Moses and received a series of well-documented but never explained visits of obvious significance. The USS Discovery, an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, was ordered away from its designated training area and was confirmed offshore of Shadow Moses Island. It joined an E-3C AWACS that had already and suddenly been deployed to the area, with none other than Jim Houseman, the National Security Advisor, aboard. 16 hours later, 6 F-117 Nighthawks with a full payload took off from Galena Air Force Base for Alaska. Various theories were placed into circulation by the media at the time. Some journalists insisted there had been a foiled invasion attempt by a foreign state. Others suspected a coup d'etat by a part of the US military. I myself wrote an opinion piece for a magazine explaining that Shadow Moses was the Ellis Island for the Greys. This diminutive gray race is, after all, the most famous This diminutive gray race is, after all, the most famous of our alien neighbors, notorious for having secret bases all over the earth. This guy is a fucking nut job. Why did Nastasia send it to this guy? But according to this file, we had up and off our mark. What had instead unfolded on Shadow Moses was the most major terrorist incident in history, an apocalyptic scenario born out of government development Superman project and a doomsday weapon of same origin. On that fateful day, the nuclear weapons disposal plant of Shadow Moses had suddenly been seized by an irregular operations squad called Foxhound, aided by a group of next-generation super soldiers. And what they threatened was no less than a nuclear strike against mainland United States. So how is it that we're still alive? Apparently, we have a man known only as Solid Snake, and a solitary infiltration disposal facility to thank for it. Believe it or not, this is the only tip of the iceberg. This is only the tip of the iceberg as far as the Shadow Moses incident is concerned. The disc contains many more horrifying facts, such as a major government conspiracy, a classified weapon described as a walking nuclear-capable tank, and advanced genetic manipulation projects. Many of these hidden dealings were discovered by Solid Snake as he carried out his mission, and it is now my job to relate these facts to you, the readers. But is it still a little too premature to do so? The content of the disc may, after all, be nothing more than fiction, or even a delusion. After all, who exactly is this Nastasha Romanenko? In search of Nastasha Romanenko. A quick search of the web turned up a few illuminating facts about this elusive writer. Nastasha Romanenko was at one point with the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. At the time of the Shadow Moses incident, she appears to have been a freelance military analyst, having already resigned from the agency. Nuclear and weapons technology would certainly be right up her alley, and in the disc she states that she took part in Solid Snake's mission support. Her exact role was as a member of NEST, Nuclear Emergency Search Team, providing field expertise via radio. Her intimate involvement in the mission gives her a complete and clear grasp of the facts surrounding the case, despite the government's successful cover-up. A look at Romanenko's curriculum vitae and body of papers made her anti-nuclear stance more than obvious. That, along with all the other facts about this person, suggests that unless she suffered a sudden chemical imbalance or is plotting a second career as a Hollywood screenwriter, Nastasha Romanenko does not indulge in expounding conspiracy theories for its own sake. All very interesting. So where is this Nastasha Romanenko now? I decided to give Global Elements Inc., the book's publisher, a call. Below is a complete transcript of the conversation. Hello, listen, your leftover carnival prize. What do you know? Your leftover carnival prize. What do you know about a woman named Nastasha Romanenko? Whoever it was. Hey, your village called. They want their idiot back. And watch your language, freak, click. We should start doing that. Hey, you leftover carnival prize. What do you know about Nastasha Romanenko? Your village called. They want their idiot back. Watch your language, freak. Clearly, they're hiding something. Why else the abrupt response and the hasty hang-up? I wonder. I was on the trail of something important, something dangerous. If the content of the disc was true, this Nastasha... Oh shit, they actually typed with it there. Natasha Romanenko. A lot of people make that mistake. It's correct everywhere else, but they typed it there. This Natasha Romanenko was definitely the woman who knew too much. Her life would be in danger, and she must either have gone to ground or was already dead. A brief telephone conversation spoke volumes. There was a contract out on her life. If this was the price of speaking the truth as described in the disc, that picture was complete. But was everything she wrote actually true? Really true? I went back to my apartment and packed a bag. I was headed for Shadow Moses. The coldest place. I took a plane out to the northernmost domestic airport and went to see my cousin, John D. John D. is a hardcore Alaskan and a big-eye tuna fisherman. When I asked him to drop me off at Shadow Moses Island during one of his trips out at sea, he turned pale and a nervous tic started up in the corner of his eye. Shadow Moses? Are you nuts? All the other guys say that place is crawling with the military. If you get even close to the shore, they shine these huge searchlights in your face, and some of my buddies even got interrogated once. I felt a sudden chill of fear along with the certainty that I was on the right track. You're a wuss, you know that? Try being abducted by a UFO, that'll teach you what's really scary. I got a family, you know? I'm not about to go messing around with the man. Okay, you get me as close as you can then. I'll swim the rest of the way. Swim? You're gonna turn into a frozen tuna treat. Don't worry about that. I have an idea. We sailed out for Shadow Moses Island that day. The trip to Shadow Moses. It was colder on the dairy section, and the boat hitched like a subway derailment on caffeine. I shook constantly from the cold, wretched peanut butter into the sea. I shook constantly from the cold, wretched peanut butter into the sea, then down some more to keep warm. A few days passed in this pleasant fashion until John D., drawing lines on his charts, turned to me. I'm sorry, man, but this is as far as I can go. If you really want to do this thing, you're going to have to find your own way. There were at least 20 miles to Shadow Moses according to the chart, but John D. was already a blubbering wreck, and I didn't have the heart to strong-arm him. I steeled my nerves. It's okay. Help me get ready. The plan was brilliant. I gutted a supersized tuna and stuffed some inflated balloons inside, along with a small oil lamp to keep the interior toasty. I would cover the length of my body with the fish and dog paddle my way to the island. Any oxygen shortage could quickly be remedied thanks to the balloon, and my landing would appear to be nothing more than a large dead fish swept ashore. All I had to do was slip out of the tuna undetected and investigate the hell out of the place. Absolutely brilliant. I wasn't even a tuna disguise, it was an actual tuna that he gutted. Amazing. What a guy. I bore the fishy stink of the tuna skin with proper journalistic aplomb and walked to the edge of the ship's deck. The Arctic wind was numbing even through the wetsuit, but I bade John D. a hearty farewell and jumped into the sea. But right then, disaster struck. Actually, it was a tuna spine. Its bony mass conked me hard on the back of my head from the force of the landing. I tried to right myself, but I was jammed tight against the balloons. The tuna started to sink rapidly, and I kicked my legs wildly as about a gallon of seawater rushed into my lungs. To add insult to injury, the lamp fell over, shedding its cover. I could feel the heat of the exposed flame dangerously close to my face, and smelled singed hair. This is why I hate traveling. But after what felt like hours, I found myself ashore on Shadow Moses Island. Let's take a moment here to review what happened on that island on the fateful day. Romanenko's disc provided a complete answer. Shadow Moses was no ordinary weapons disposal facility, but served as a secret military training ground, among other things. On that day, the Wetworth Commando Unit known as Foxhound and the Next Generation Special Force Unit, Special Force Group, were conducting joint exercises. Foxhound is an irregular squad of elite soldiers equipped and armed to the teeth with the latest technology. They were a long time and strictly behind the scenes players throughout recent history, engaging in sabotage, selective assassinations, and other covert military operations. Wherever the United States could not officially intervene, whether it was a civil war, regional unrest, or other types of low-intensity conflict, Foxhound was there. It's unlikely, however, that an average citizen has ever heard of them before. These commandos remain a top-secret government project. And then, there's the Next Generation Special Forces Unit. This is a cutting-edge anti-terrorist force newly organized to cope with terrorist incidents. Where's Dib? That's like his favorite line here. The translation is a little wonky, but to cope with terrorist incidents, specifically involving weapons of mass destruction, that fight in nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. They draw heavily from former mercenary ranks and are on a diet of rigorous VR training guided by the Force 21 concept. The result is combat capability which is rumored to surpass even those of Delta Force and DevGru, formerly known as SEAL Team 6. Oh, interesting. Most frightening of all, these soldiers have supposedly been manipulated at the genetic level to increase their combat performance. They were the purebreds among the dogs of war, and they turn on their masters with a surprising demand. Having seized the civilians that were on hand, they demanded that the government turn over to them the body of Foxhound's founder and combat genius, the so-called Big Boss. The government had 24 hours to comply, or a nuclear strike would be initiated. But what would motivate them to make such a demand? And how did they intend to make their good their threat of a nuclear launch? With these questions still unanswered, the government decided on a seemingly reckless course of action. This daunting task of stopping a nuclear strike and freeing the hostages from the clutches of these ultimate soldiers, they sent in a single man. His name was Solid Snake, no other than a former member of the now renegade Foxhound, and a legend among mercenaries for single-handedly bringing down the fortress cities of Outer Heaven and Zanzibar land. Your reaction is probably one of incredulity. Just one guy, you may wonder. They decided to gamble the future of the entire world on a single mercenary? I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment, but there is more to this mission than meets the eye, and as I was later to discover. Solid Snake's remote support team. Snake was delivered to the island by the USS Discovery, an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine. He may have been the lone field operative, but there was a distinguished mission control team in contact with him by radio. Overall control of the mission rested with Colonel Roy Campbell aboard the USS Discovery. As a former commander of Foxhound and Snake's CO during the 1999 Zanzibar land standoff, he was forcibly called out of retirement to deal with this latest crisis. Also aboard the Discovery was Dr. Naomi Hunter, a genetic engineering expert with the commercial biotech firm ATGC Inc. She was in charge of Foxhound's gene manipulation program. Mei Ling, the architect of the mission's state-of-the-art radar and communication systems, was the third team member. Apparently something of an engineering wunderkind, she developed this next-generation communication technology while still a student at MIT. At the time of the mission, she may have still been in her teens. McDonald Miller, a former Foxhound survival instructor, was the only land-bound member of the mission control team. Unlike the other four, Miller was working out of his home in Alaska at his own request. Wonder Kid. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. It's close enough. Lastly, Nastasha Romanenko, the author of In the Darkness of Shadow Moses, rounded out the team as an expert on nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. What terrorist acts were committed here? The hostages and what they tell us. The first task faced by Solid Snake upon his infiltration of Shadow Moses Island was the rescue of the hostages. Two of the captives in particular were considered top priority, but neither survived the mission. Though Snake successfully freed both men, they died suddenly in an identical manner. At the time, the mission control team tentatively attributed the death to heart attacks, a diagnosis that was to prove starkly incorrect. The first hostage was Donald Anderson, the head of DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, the R&D body of the U.S. Department of Defense. The organization is responsible for planning and overseeing the development of new weapons technology. The other VIP hostage, Kenneth Baker, was the president of Armstech, one of the largest and most powerful defense subcontractors in the country. An overseer of the U.S. war technology and powerful arms producer don't just happen to meet in an out-of-the-way military outpost. No one reading this account can fail to realize that these two had no business in a nuclear weapons disposal plant. And since neither Anderson nor Baker was in the habit of enjoying winter picnics, Romanenko's assertion that there was a new weapon secretly being developed on the island rings all the more true. According to her, there was indeed such a weapon, and it was close enough to completion to warrant a field test. But what exactly was this new weapon? The mother of all weapons. Metal Gear. I'm not sure if it's a term that many of you have heard. I know it only as a kind of journalistic or urban legend while I was still a beat reporter. It was a phantom bipedal tank that moved with unprecedented speed across difficult terrain such as mountains, desert, and swamps, firing nuclear warheads from locations that were previously impossible. Once this weapon rolled off the assembly line, nuclear strikes could be made from almost any adverse terrain, and the tactical nuclear map for the whole world would be rewritten. This nuclear-capable bipedal tank, bipedal, they say both in the series, I don't fucking know, is said to have lurked in the wings of both Outer Heaven and South Africa, Outer Heaven of South Africa and Zanzibar land in Central Asia. At least I got that right. One theory holds that the development had progressed to a working prototype stage, but the weapon never materialized on the world arms stage. In a strange coincidence, or casual connection, it was none other than Solid Snake who saved the world from the threat of Metal Gear during both incidents. But history does indeed repeat itself, and the specter of Metal Gear rose once again in the state-of-the-art weapons development program on Shadow Moses Island. When I reached this point in the narrative, I suddenly checked myself. Wasn't Metal Gear's time effectively over? Ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union late last century, the idea of mutually assured destruction and the arms race to maintain this dangerous status quo had been fading into obsolescence. The START II treaty signed by both superpowers had already started to chip away at the nuclear stockpile even back then. In fact, the disposal facility Shadow Moses had been built to disarm and temporarily store many of these same warheads. With the very idea of nuclear weapons under serious scrutiny, why would the military invest in the development of a nuclear-capable tank? Or was there something more to this weapon? The nature of the beast. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Metal Gear Rex, the newest of its kind. Almost 45 feet in height, equipped with Vulcan cannons and a laser array and shielded by a cutting-edge composite armor, rendering the unit practically impervious to even heat high-explosive anti-tank warheads. And I haven't gotten to the truly scary part of this thing. The crown jewel of the Shadow Moses Metal Gear was its railgun technology. The gun was designed to fire nuclear warheads clear of the atmosphere, where they would automatically align themselves to the target and ride the optimal trajectory back down to Earth. So what, you may think? There's a big fat missile flying in from the sky. Who cares where it came from? Just shoot the damn thing down. But here's the catch. You won't be able to find any of Rex's warheads, let alone shoot them down. Don't believe me? It's all in the numbers. The facts bear me out. Normally, ballistic missiles go through 4 phases from launch to impact. The first is the boost phase, which consists of the time between the missile's launch and the point at which it leaves the atmosphere and exhausts its supply of rocket propellant. Following the burnout, the rocket enters a post-boost phase that concludes with the separation of the re-entry vehicle that contains the warhead. The third stage is the mid-course phase, in which the re-entry vehicle separates and achieves a controlled descent back into the atmosphere. The warhead's re-entry into the atmosphere and its arrival at the target mark the fourth and terminal phase. Current missile defense systems are alerted to incoming ballistic missiles by detecting the rocket burn during the missile's boost stage. However, Metal Gear's missile technology employs a railgun rather than conventional rocket propulsion to achieve boost stage acceleration. As a result, there is nothing for existing missile defense systems to detect. The railgun's effectiveness is nothing short of amazing, with a range of over 3,000 miles, rivaling that of mid-range ballistic missiles. It reliably homes in within 170 feet of the target 50% of the time, placing it in the same class as high-end ICBMs. The ability of a Metal Gear to conquer virtually all terrain means that the railgun can launch a stealthy nuclear strike from almost any spot on the globe. This invisible attack would make it impossible for anyone to pinpoint the origin of a given missile, even in the event of a strike. Without a clear aggressor to retaliate against, the concept of mutual assured destruction falls apart. Without the fear of MAD, the existing rules of nuclear non-engagement would no longer apply. It also wouldn't matter if the whole world knew that a nuclear missile would be launched from Shadow Moses Island. The missile defense system was helpless against a new breed of ballistic missiles. This was exactly what the terrorists counted on unleashing in Metal Gear Rex, and its all-powerful nuclear weapon against the world. What I finally saw inside the fortress. Anyway, I trudged through the cave, sweating under the weight of my trusty tuna. Soon, the rocks gave way to smooth walls and a row of bright lights. I had finally arrived. This was no doubt the cradle of insurrection. This was no doubt the cradle of insurrection. The military facility which Solid Snake so brilliantly penetrated. Eye of the storm that threatened to engulf the world. Fortunately, there was not a soul to be seen. I could, however, hear a faint cry amidst the whistle of the wind. "Gary, help me!" I couldn't believe my ears. How could anyone on a remote island that I'd never visited know my name? I took a good cautious look around and saw a familiar figure among the steel pillars in the corner. It was John D. My cousin, who'd so carelessly pitched me overboard into the sub-zero water only a few hours ago, was now sitting on the ground, tied to a post. What had happened? "Help, Gary!" I trotted over to where he was calling pathetically, the tuna heavy on my back. He smiled weakly when he saw me. "What the hell happened to you, John D?" I asked, crouching down next to him. "I don't know. Right after I let you off, this black helicopter came around." "A helicopter?" "Yeah, kind of a squarish black one. The next thing I know, I'm tied up here. Gary, why are you still wearing that fish?"
"Oh shit!"
Was there more to this as I suspected? Who was responsible? The military or that mysterious group mentioned in the disc? One whose authority outstrips even that of the President of the United States. Here we go. I think that's like the first mention of the Patriots. My thoughts were interrupted by sudden gunfire. I instinctively pulled the tuna over me again. "Gary, you gotta help me. Untie me, will ya?" Where was the shooter? The bullets were wildly ricocheting off the posts, making it impossible for me to pinpoint the origin. If I stayed put, I was dead meat. What should be my next course of action? "Untie me, man. Gary! Don't call me Gary. I'm just a tuna." I started to run, dodging bullets and sprinting up the stairs. I was unstoppable, speeding away like a gazelle in large fish skin. "Farewell, cousin John D." Oh my god, I fucking left his cousin tied up behind. "Farewell, cousin John D. There are responsibilities greater than your safety that I must shoulder. Mine is a high and lonely path." Solid Snake versus the Army of Darkness. Let's take this moment to review Solid Snake's footsteps. The nuclear weapons disposal facility that he had infiltrated was crawling with terrorists, and engaging the enemy was unavoidable. This was a battlefield, no mistake about it. Snake's progress had been impeded at every step by the patrolling squad of super genome soldier of such formidable foxhounds as Psychomantis, the master of psychokinesis and mind reading, the chameleon-like decoy octopus, the chain gun wielding giant Vulcan Raven, and Sniper Wolf, one of the best marksmen in history. The following is a profile. Back music. The following is a profile of individuals whose involvement with the government conspiracy seems to be the most intimate. Information should help make the terrifying truth about this case even more clear. Revolver Ocelot, an ex-Spetsnaz, also known as Shalashazka. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, he found lucrative contracts as a mercenary in conflict-ridden regions throughout the world. His activities led to his recruitment by the US government and his entry into Foxhound. As his code name indicates, he is a brilliant marksman whose preferred weapon is a revolver. Ocelot challenged Snake when he came looking for Kenneth Baker, the president of Armstack Inc. But the battle never reached the conclusion Ocelot wanted due to the sudden intrusion of stealth camouflage-clad cyborg ninja. The ninja's sword cut a deadly arc right through Ocelot's right arm, and Ocelot retreated in agony. The Russian sharpshooter also served as a liaison between the terrorist band and the nuclear militia led by renegade Colonel Gorlukovich. According to Foxhound leader Liquid Snake's master plan, the Russian militia would join them in Shadow Moses after a nuclear strike had been launched. They would then commence an all-out assault on the rest of the world from their safe retreat on the island. With nuclear missiles that could neither be detected nor defended against, over 1,000 first-class Russian soldiers, next-generation genome commandos, and the combat skill and tactical cunning of Foxhound, this new army's objective was nothing short of World War III. The Ninja. Mystery figure equipped with a reinforced exoskeleton and stealth camouflage confounded Snake as well as the terrorists with his superhuman strength and agility. His interest seems to not have been what was happening within the facility. Evidence suggests that he was there solely to engage Snake in battle. It was through such an encounter that Snake realized the identity of the ninja. His name had been none other than Gary Fox, and no way. It's funny because this guy's name is Gary. It was written in the article. His name had been Gray Fox, and he was supposed to have been killed by Snake, his best friend. This may seem surprising, but the dead coming back to life is a fairly routine occurrence. There are examples throughout the world to prove the fact. When a Roland Gray's grave was relocated in 1952, there were deep gouge marks discovered on the inside of the Hungarian farmer's casket lid. It looked as though the dying man had tried to claw his way out of the coffin. On a brighter note, a Japanese man called Jin Emon Nakatama walked out of a stalactite cave in 1914, a full 10 years after he had gone missing while exploring the same cave. His family was doubly astonished to discover his family was doubly astonished to discover that he had apparently not aged a day since they last saw him. All this makes complete sense to me, and it should to you as well in a moment. 2 words: pyramid power. I had no doubt that Gray Fox was forced to undergo the same revival process by military scientists in the course of their horrific genetic experiments. Pyramid power? What? Alright, give me a second. This guy's a fucking nut job. Nice. Liquid Snake. I know exactly what you're thinking as you hear the name of the man who led the Shadow Moses uprising. And my answer is yes. Solid Snake, our hero, and Liquid Snake are none other than twin brothers. They are not, however, twins in the usual sense. This is yet another manifestation of the US military's dangerous love affair with genetic engineering. The two snakes are fighting machines created through the so-called Project Les Enfants Terribles. The rumors that the government is attempting mass production of super soldiers are numerous and persistent. Just the other day, I came across something called D People EO, a humanoid combat droid. Development on the outer shell had gone off without a hitch, but the unit had to have a human being inside to function, which decreased its utility somewhat. The military finally realized the fact late in the game and pulled the plug. There was also a plan to use a well-known psychokinetics DNA material to breed an army of gifted soldiers. Oh shit, who's that be? Who could that be? Unfortunately, someone pointed out that there is indeed no spoon, at least not in a normal combat situation. Solid and liquid, the Matrix. Solid and liquid snakes, however, were successfully created from their father, Big Boss's genetic material. They were literally born to be extraordinary soldiers, and it was no surprise that when they finally met, the result would be a titanic confrontation. What I saw on the roof. I hauled myself and the tuna up the steps, dodging the invisible sniper. Oh shit, he go up the communication towers? The spiral staircase seemed to go on forever. Just as I was about to give up the climb, I saw the exit on the roof. I pulled open the door and lurched into the faintly lit gloom. The sub-zero wind felt soothing on my overworked body. I laid the tuna down and sat down next to it, trying to catch my breath. The enemy may pursue me even here, but I had nothing left in me to run with. I pulled out my hip flask of peanut butter and bourbon and took a long swig. Fiery liquid slid down my throat, hot and thick. Peanut butter is my Waterloo. When I was a kid, I was a wuss who couldn't eat peanut butter like other red-blooded children. One day, I decided to confront this weakness of mine and put myself on a peanut butter overload. Anything I put in my mouth had to have peanut butter on it. I piled this stuff on everything from chili dogs without onions, my favorite dish, spearmint gum to my girlfriend's lips. What? The inevitable result was that I came to hate peanut butter. If I didn't like it much before, I now loathed it with abandon. If I could gather the entire world's supply of peanut butter and dump it in the Bermuda Triangle, I would. What the fuck? As it is, all I can do is eat as much of the stuff as I can. Peanut butter, I will always hate you. How does the song go? And I will always hate you. No, that's not it. Will always. It must be another song I'm thinking of. Can't remember. Snow is starting to coat my shoes. Where was my tuna? Oh, there it is, right next to me. Bright light in my eye. Now I remember what day it is. June 24th. Anniversary of my UFO abduction. Why am I so sleepy? What is that sound? It was a chopper, a squarish black one, and it was coming closer. Foxdie, the secret assassination virus. If you recall, I wrote that the two hostages, the DARPA chief Donald Anderson and Arms Tech President Kenneth Bacon, died of a heart attack while they were being rescued by Solid Snake. The actual cause of their death, however, was a specifically engineered assassination virus called Foxdie. Foxdie is a retrovirus that kills only a select people. Its development kills only a select people. Okay. Its development was passed on to Naomi Hunter from her predecessor. Once fox dye finds its way into its target's system, the person dies almost immediately. It's practically a viral equivalent of spontaneous human combustion. Dr. Hunter had injected Solid Snake with the virus, and as he unwittingly made contact with his targets one by one, they fell prey to the retrovirus's power. But the decision to infect Snake was not hers. That order, in fact, came directly from the Pentagon. The Defense Department's goal. The true objective of the DoD was to selectively assassinate the perpetrators of a terrorist uprising. All Snake had to do was come into contact with the targets. The mission objectives he was actually given, namely to stop the nuclear launch or rescue the hostages, were nothing more than a smokescreen. By simply sending Snake in as a disease vector, the Pentagon stood to reclaim their expensive investments, Metal Gear, and the bodies of the Genome soldiers, with little risk of damage. The Pentagon also believed that Fox Dye would successfully cover up the incident by the virtue of its lethality. However, Naomi Hunter's re-engineering of the virus cast great doubts in the reliability of Fox Dye itself. Even though the nature of her manipulation was unknown, the Pentagon decided to take extreme measures to counteract this development. The bomber on the horizon. Alarmed by the news of Dr. Hunter's tampering, the then Defense Secretary Jim Houseman personally took over as the mission's commander and headed for Shadow Moses on an AWACS. Around the same time, a bomber took off from the base in Galena, Alaska, carrying a payload of surface-piercing B-61-13 tactical missiles. The Defense Secretary had decided on a more direct approach to cover-up. Fighting nuke with nuke. It was a rationale that smacked of a return to the arms race, and Snake was furious. He had already succeeded in destroying Metal Gear Rex, and the terrorist incident was over for all intents and purposes. Was a nuclear airstrike to be his prize for accomplishing all this? As it turned out, the airstrike never happened. Somebody had countermanded Jim Houseman's orders. You may think that the only person with the authority to override the orders of the Secretary of Defense was his Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. But like most things in this account, the truth is far from obvious. The hand that stopped the nuclear strike was that of a shadowy secret society. See, the Patriots stopped Houseman and probably got Campbell out, like we were talking about the other day. But what kind of a group is it whose power outstrips even that of the American presidency? The face of the enemy. When I came to, I was sitting in the weather station cabin with a burlap sack on my head and my hands tied behind my back. This is the way it ends, I thought dimly. I haul myself all the way out to this pimple on the Arctic and die at the hands of an invisible executioner without finding out a thing. One of my captors moved in closer and started to rummage through my inside chest pocket. I cursed inwardly. This was where I carried Nastasha Romanenko's disc, the entire account of the Shadow Moses incident. So he took that with him in the tuna in water? What a fucking idiot. My policy is the best way to ensure that something doesn't get stolen is to have it with you at all times. Clearly, I needed to reevaluate that one. Man easily found and seized the disc. What is this? He demanded. Whatever it is, it's worth more than you. I responded with as much menace and dignity as the burlap on my head allowed. Well, that is something. What followed was both highly tedious and painful, and nothing of great significance was said until the electrified statement, "We have the disc back." We now come full circle since the start of my account, and caught up to the point where it originated. It was unclear how the disc had gotten to Max Smithson at Mega Surprise, but my captor's words indicated that the disc had originally belonged to them. Either that, or they were the ones who wanted it the most urgently. I took my courage in my hands and opened dialogue with them. Yo, you guys happen to be that secret society whose power outstrips even that of the American presidency? Answer me, you artificial coloring in the cheap drugstore candy cane. What? This had the exact effect I'd hoped for, namely to send them into a violent fit of rage. I must have hit pretty close to home. The contents of the disc were as good as verified. This was indeed a secret society whose power outstripped even that of the American presidency. In my delight, I hardly paid attention to the obscenities that were being screamed at me, nor to the distinct sound of a gun being pulled out of its holster. It was then that the cabin suddenly erupted into controlled chaos. It seemed only seconds from the time the window was smashed in the moment I realized that my captors had been decimated and I was alone with my savior. Who was this human whirlwind? I was ready to lose my lunch from curiosity and terror. I could taste the peanut butter in my mouth. I could hear the enigma walk up to me and lift the burlap sack off my head. I concentrated on the hammering on my heart for a moment, then slowly looked up. There was nobody there. I could see nothing, sense nothing, but someone was untying the ropes biting into my wrists. Invisible hands placed themselves on either side of my head in a strange parody of a coronation. Then deftly removed the bandana I had early fashioned from a clumsy bandage from my bruised head. Though he had a bandana too. The faded piece of cloth was not my own, but of what's found on the beach. I reached for the unseen figure with my shaking hands, but with one quick flick of the bandana, it was gone. But there were more surprises to come. As I gingerly moved my stiff body, felt an unfamiliar bulk against my chest, and discovered the precious optical disc, miraculously recovered. Not only that, but there were enough backup copies to fill me with awe and pop the stitches from my flimsy pocket. I thought of my mysterious savior, possessed of superhuman fighting ability, invisible and capable of burning discs in an instant. What? There were only one possible explanation. It had to be an alien, probably the little gray kind. What the fuck? Made copies of the discs in an instant? Okay. So, I want to play that spin-off. Snake saving this guy. Yeah. Life after Shadow Moses. And so I came in from the cold to my hole of an apartment in New York. My trusty tuna beside me. He brought the fucking tuna all the way back. The landlord mentioned that my neighbor, the starving student, had gone missing recently. It could be that I was nosing around the wrong information from his machine. If I ever see him alive again, I should apologize. So this guy fucked over his neighbor and his cousin. I am currently banging out this manuscript on an antique typewriter. This is the truth as described on the optical disc, and as elaborated and verified by my own experiences on that fearsome island. As this account draws to a close, my thoughts dwell more and more on Nastasia Romanenko, the woman who risked everything by recording the facts of the incident onto the disc. I think it was her way of giving voice to the victims of this mission. The casualties of nuclear weapons throughout modern history, and to all the lives disrupted and damaged by an elaborate government conspiracy. Her will was passed on to a counterculture journalist in New York City, that's me, and the truth is now out there for all to see, just as she dreamed. Readers, the responsibility to disseminate the fact of the Shadow Moses incident is now yours. What will you risk to know the truth? Publishers Afterword. This non-fiction work was based on an factual account written by Nastasia Romanenko, a military analyst who allegedly took part in a secret mission to counter a terrorist incident on Alaska's Shadow Moses Island. Her account was published in its original unabridged form as In the Darkness of Shadow Moses after the successful publication of this volume. Gary McGolden, the author, is a journalist and nonfiction writer who is best known for his past bestsellers, The Telekinetic Powers of the Loch Ness Monster. the Nessie mentioned. The telekinetic powers of the Loch Ness Monster, the true energy source of UFOs. The details of McGolden's adventures in Shadow Moses remain uncorroborated, but there are serious doubts about as to his tuna-aided landing on the island. There is, in fact, ample evidence that he was swept out to another small island several miles south of Shadow Moses and failed to realize that fact. McGolden has seemingly vanished into thin air following this manuscript's arrival at our humble offices. While this had been a source of great pleasure on account of our accounting department, I sincerely hope that this notoriously fickle but talented writer is hard at work on a follow-up to this volume. Though certain aspects of the book require further fact-checking, this alone should not dissuade you of the veracity of many of its main assertions, nor should you dismiss the contents of Nastasia Romanenko's disc outright. Instead, readers should approach this account with an open mind and a sense of adventure, much as Gary McGolden did when he first received the disc in the mail. I should note, however, that Gary was mistaken about one thing. I never mailed him that disc. Max Smithson, editor-in-chief of Mega Surprise magazine. The twist! I never mailed him that disc. Nice, nice. And they do give you In the Darkness of Shadow Moses. Hold on, let me check something. Yeah, I have no saves. So that's interesting. Even without having played the game, no saves or anything, they give you In the Darkness of Shadow Moses to read in its full only 324 pages. So this would actually spoil a lot of the game. But you know what? That's not a risk, because nobody's gonna fucking read this, let alone read it before the game, playing the game. Alright guys, I'm gonna take a short break because obviously this is taking a toll on my vocal cords, parasites, and whatnot. But yeah, we'll do it. If we don't do it now, when are we gonna do it? So much good stuff in here that goes ignored. Okay. Give me like 5 or 10 minutes. And yeah. We should read this in Nastasia's voice. Only I could do her accent. Let me see if I can switch the music around for this. Yeah, there used to be a YouTube channel with all this nice music and stuff, and it's gone now, I think. Let me see if I can find it. Um, yeah. Where? Damn, it sucks that the channel is gone, man. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, get comfy, guys. Well, it's 324 pages, but look how like they're little pages, you know. People get so intimidated by text. We'll still be here a couple hours, I guess. If I could find this fucking channel that I linked once on my Twitter. Man, Twitter search sucks. Okay, let's see. Game rip, extended music. And maybe I found it, I think. Um, there doesn't seem to be one channel that has everything out there anymore. Some channels will have like one or two, but sucks. All right, I'll be back. Wait, learning him? Maybe you should learn yourself first. All right, here we go. I dedicate this book to the casualties of Shadow Moses, as well as to all those who suffered the tyranny of nuclear weapons, and to Richard Ames, Nastasha Romanenko. Prologue. Shadow Moses Island, whatever coordinates. Okay. Even the local fishermen rarely venture to this outcropping of land. Yet the incident of all incidents took place on this remote isle, north of Alaska's Fox Islands. A number of confirmed facts undermine the US government's denial of this entire affair. Among those are the sudden appearance of a Ohio-class nuclear submarine USS Discovery of Shadow Moses, far away from its designated position, and an official record that shows that a squadron of 6 fully armed F-117 Nighthawks departed from Galena Air Force Base for Alaska in a scant 16 hours later. In another possibly related event, an E-3C AWACS, an emergency deployment to the Alaska area, is said to have none other than the then National Security Advisor Jim Hausman as its onboard VIP. What exactly happened in Shadow Moses? There was no lack of rumors to account for the series of unusual military activities. An armed incursion, a coup attempted by a branch of the military, and other theories made its way to the public table. I can state unequivocally that none of them came close to the truth. What actually took place was the single greatest terrorist incident in modern history. It was an act of political violence on a scale the world had never seen, a blow that threatened to send the Damocles sword of nuclear warfare into a freefall. Most significant of all, the attack stemmed from several so-called black projects which the US government had been conducting in top secret, away from public scrutiny. Hey Tim, you missed cope with terrorists attack in the previous article. I have in my hand 2 optical discs. One contains the entire record of events that took place in Shadow Moses Island that fateful day. The takeover of a nuclear weapons disposal plant by an armed group. Other key points of this incredible record are the identification of the perpetrators of the government's own genetically enhanced next generation commandos and a covert special forces squad, Foxhound, with a long dark history of secret intervention. The existence of one Metal Gear Rex, a bipedal nuclear-capable tank whose development was one of the most classified projects of all time. The discovery of massive government conspiracy. The activities of a former Foxhound operative who single-handedly took on this daunting situation and averted the crisis. A man who is known only by his codename, Solid Snake. The other remaining disc holds the details of Project Foxdie, a massive cover-up which the US government planned and executed in order to prevent exposure. There are, after all, forces within the US government who seek to maintain the military power structure established in the last century and will not hesitate to resuscitate the terror of nuclear arms in order to achieve that end. My intent is to expose their activity and the entirety of the Shadow Moses affair through this book. Only then can we hope to free the coming generations from the damnosa hereditas of the 20th century nuclear arms race. I looked up from the mass of documents at the sound of the doorbell. On the monitor in front of me was a half-finished status report of the resurgence of nuclear arms development in a certain Middle Eastern state. The UNSCOM, United Nations Special Commission, had officially requested a survey by the UN weapons inspectors and had been refused entry. Tensions were once again running high in the Gulf. As a military analyst whose specialty was nuclear arms, I was under contract from a think tank to produce a study of the situation. It was due the day after the next, and interruptions were definitely not welcome. I ground out my cigarette in the ashtray and stepped out of the study. All visitors to my house are checked via surveillance camera and then let through the heavy gate. The property itself is surrounded by a high wall. It may seem like overkill for a beach community, but security is a necessity in greater Los Angeles, if only to keep out the legion of swimsuit-clad homeless people. However, there was nobody to be seen at the gate. It was either a prank or a camera was malfunctioning. Reluctant to investigate, but feeling unsettled nevertheless, I headed back to the study and sat back down the computer to continue my work. Just then, someone spoke behind me. "You always were a little careless." Spun around, kicking my chair over. There was a man standing at the entrance of the study, slouching in a well-tailored suit. "Richard." He caught my eye and grinned. Ignoring my surprise, he strolled into the room, gazing around the pile of books and papers. And still as disorganized as ever. He shrugged his shoulders in a familiar gesture, triggering a wave of memories laced with bitterness. Richard Ames and I were married, once upon a time. We were both young and working for the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. We spent much of our brief marriage in disagreement over virtually every issue. And just as I came to realize our union was a mistake, he disappeared from my life. A while later, I received the paperwork for divorce from his lawyer. There was a generous alimony offer involved, which I refused. Not only did I find the thought of owing him anything intolerable, I also wanted to prove that he was not the only one who could walk away without an explanation. The divorce was finalized without us ever meeting face to face, and we were legally strangers once again. In 5 years since, I quit the DIA and became a freelance analyst. I had not seen Richard at all, nor have even heard of his whereabouts. "How did you get in here?" I demanded. After all, attempting to scale the wall or force the front door would immediately trigger a security system. But he refused to be ruffled. "If you're going to use a flimsy lock like that, may as well not bother. I recommend a more professional security setup." "Does the term breaking and entering mean anything to you, Richard?" "You know, law isn't my field of expertise," he replied nimbly and peered over my shoulder to report on the computer display. "Radio, isotope, projectile separator, uranium-235 production feasibility for high-speed gas centrifuge. This must be about that Middle East nuke development. Looks like your career is going well. That's great." I pushed Richard aside and asked him flatly, "What do you want?" He took a step back and regarded me with a slight mischievous smile. "What, you afraid I came back to give us another chance?" He let the silence linger as if to relish my reaction. Then, suddenly formal, he continued, "It's an official request from the DIA." He placed a folder on the desk. "I'm asking you for your cooperation as a member of NEST. NEST stands for Nuclear Emergency Search Team, a group that operates on the Department of Energy budget. It was established in 1974 to provide technological support to the FBI in areas of intelligence, investigation, site securement, damage containment, and medical response during incidents involving criminal threats of nuclear weapon use. Call it a band of experts on nuclear terrorism, if you will. NEST consists of independently contracted scientists from federally funded research entities like Los Alamos, Lawrence, Livermore, finally they spelled it right, Livermore, and military specialists from groups dealing with nuclear armed issues. I happen to be one of the latter group. Richard was opening the file folder. "You've heard of Shadow Moses Island, I assume?" I nodded assent. I had indeed heard of the remote place north of Alaska's Fox Islands. Though it was hardly public knowledge, the island was home to a nuclear weapons disposal facility. According to the terms of the START II Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the total number of tactical warheads owned by the US and Russia were reduced somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 in the later decades of the 20th century. The outcome was a massive number of warheads in need of disposal when there was already a shortage of storage space for radioactive materials. As a result, warheads had to be kept somewhere before they could be dismantled and their radioactive elements extracted for long-term storage. The Shadow Moses facility was the answer. It was the crystallization of the forces of nuclear proliferation, political engineering that gives preference to delaying a solution rather than producing one, and a hidden military agenda to preserve what it could of the nuclear stockpile, the old nuclear stockpile. Richard took several photographs from the folder and handed them to me. They all appear to be satellite captures of the nuclear weapons disposal plant on Shadow Moses Island, perhaps required from the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. There were multiple human figures around the building structures. Richard broke the silence. The disposal plant was seized by terrorists. I looked up sharply at the news, but his next words left me speechless. And the ringleaders are Foxhound members. An irregular team of the best commandos the military has to offer, armed with cutting-edge technology. That was Foxhound. The best of the best, and completely unknown to the public they ostensibly serve. Their function was to intervene in the kind of low-intensity conflicts the US could not officially touch. They were the shadow soldiers of numerous regional conflicts and civil wars, shaping history in sabotage, selective assassination, and other covert acts of war. Richard had more to say. It's not just Foxhound that's involved in this. Foxhound was conducting joint exercises with the Next Generation Special Forces, and they're a part of the takeover as well. The Next Generation Special Forces is an aggressive anti-terrorism squad deployed to counter acts of political violence involving weapons of mass destruction, such as nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare methods. The combat philosophy is derived from one used for Force 21, and most of their recruits come from the mercenary background. The men are intensively trained in VR environment, and their combat capability is estimated to be well beyond even those of Delta Force or the Night Stalkers. While the government categorically denies the accusation, there are persistent rumors that the men have been genetically enhanced to increase tactical advantage. Foxhound and the Next Generation Special Forces. They were without a doubt the most skilled group of fighting men produced by the US, and they had hijacked a nuclear arsenal. Richard had more bad news. There were also civilian hostages involved. Two of them happened to be the DARPA chief, Donald Anderson, and Kenneth Baker, the president of Armstech Inc. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency is a research satellite of the US Defense Department, charged with planning and leading the development of new weapons technology. AT happens to be one of the top 3 defense contractors in the country. There is no such thing as a coincidence, especially the kind that involves the head of these two organizations meeting in an out-of-the-way nuclear weapons disposal plant. I decided to be direct with Richard. There was something going on in that disposal facility, I take it. Let me guess, demonstration of a new weapon. How should I know? Shadow Moses is also prime Northern Lights observation locale, you know? Whatever Richard knew, he wasn't telling. But his evasiveness only confirmed my suspicions. Whatever was going on, this was no ordinary terrorist incident. With that in mind, I moved on to another point. What are their demands? They want a body. Not just any corpse though, they want Foxhound's founder, Big Boss, legendary soldier, best fighting man of the 20th century, the whole works. His body, why would they want something like that so badly? No idea, but unless they have it within 24 hours, they'll launch a nuclear strike. Richard glanced at the watch coolly. So we have about 19 hours. You don't seem too worried. The DoD is already working on the situation. Just as I suspected. Richard always has a plan in place and the machinery in motion before opening up to someone else. All he asks from others is approval after the fact. Shadow Moses is completely locked down. We had to rule out deploying an entire assault team. Instead, we're inserting a single operative to free the hostages and prevent nuclear strike. and possible. Possible for Solid Snake. Solid Snake, former foxhound, a legend among mercenaries for single-handedly bringing down the fortress cities of Outer Heaven and Zanzibar land. Yes, with Solid Snake in the picture, there was a possibility of success, but still. USS Discovery, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine, is already in place with Snake aboard. So the plan was already a go. I looked Richard in the eye and held his gaze. And what do I have to do with all this? He grinned. Snake may be a legend, but he knows jack about nuclear weapons. Which is why I'm asking you to be a part of the mission support. We'll have you set up in no time. Right on cue, two men started to move a large piece of hardware, apparently communication equipment, into the study. Richard nodded towards the bulky load. I'd like you to be available to Snake for consultation via satellite link-up. As soon as the equipment was in place, an engineer type started to make adjustments. I could see another group of men setting up a satellite dish in the backyard. They were all in civilian clothes, but not a few of them had the build and the oddly fitting jacket that marked them as armed military personnel. Clearly, refusal was not an option. But there was still something that puzzled me. Nest has a small investigative team, SRT, on standby at all times for immediate response. They were stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, just over in Nevada. Clearly, they were the natural choice for this assignment, and if not for the SRT, the DIA also had a number of qualified nuclear weapons specialists. Richard had started to direct his men on where to set up the equipment, but I interrupted him. Why me? He turned and answered without missing a beat. I need people I can trust. There's too much at stake. It was a lie. Richard Ames anew trusted no one, but it was clear that whatever the reason, he did not intend to tell me. It's a good thing I was in. What would you have done if I weren't? You had to be somewhere. We would have located you. I'm sure you would have. So, are you in? I took a deep breath. Of course. I don't enjoy being a pawn, especially Richard's, but I had no intention of standing by while nuclear terrorism was in progress. A nuclear strike takes an untold number of lives, all in the blink of an eye. Adults and infants, women and men, it kills indiscriminately. If there was a chance that I could do something to stay at the hand of the nuclear button, I had to do it. So, everything is set. Richard slapped a fist into the other pawn. Insertion was a success. Snake is on Shadow Moses. Richard walked into the study with the update he'd just received from one of his men. The study was almost unrecognizable, thanks in part to the racks of communication hardware. Cables sneak across every square inch of available space, and engineers and DIA agents were coming and going in controlled chaos. The place looked like what it now was, a temporary mission control room. Richard laid a hand on my shoulder. You should be hearing from him soon. You're clear on how to use the radio? I nodded in assent. While the engineers were busy setting up the equipment, I had been briefed on its use as well as the mission. Snake had been delivered to the general area of Shadow Moses Island by USS Discovery, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine. It was then ejected from the submarine on the Swimmer Delivery Vehicle, SDV, which he abandoned once within the range of underwater listening devices located near the disposal plant. He would swim the rest of the way in the freezing cold Bering Sea water. This last leg of the insertion struck me as nothing short of suicidal until I learned the Solid Snake was outfitted with a state-of-the-art sneaking suit and had been injected with a compound designed to prevent the onset of hypothermia. In addition, Snake would be the only field operative involved. He would be in radio contact with a support team during much of the mission. The members of the support team drew from a wide range of backgrounds. The mission control officer was Colonel Roy Campbell, who would remain aboard the USS Discovery. I knew him by reputation alone. He was a former Foxhound commander and Solid Snake's CEO during the quelling of the 1999 Zanzibar land uprising. He had retired soon after, but from the looks of things, he had been called out of retirement for this mission. Dr. Naomi Hunter, a genetic engineering expert on a temporary assignment from the Gentech giant ATGC, was also on the team. She had apparently been leading the bioengineering program for Foxhound. Richard, matter-of-factly confirmed that both Foxhound and Next Generation Special Forces had been undergoing genetic manipulation to enhance their combat capability. I have a difficult time grasping what we have come to, modifying a person's essential genetic structure for the sake of creating a better soldier. Also aboard the Discovery was Mei Ling, the inventor of the new radar and communication system deployed for this mission. She was something of an engineer wunderkind. A wunderkid? I don't know. An MIT student who managed to turn the current protocol of secure communication completely on its head. The last of the support team was McDonald Miller, a former survival instructor for Foxhound. Unlike the rest of us, he had volunteered his services upon receiving news of the incident in Shadow Moses. Like myself, he was working via satellite link-up from his home in Alaska. Or was he? The five of us were more than equipped to support Snake from our respective areas of expertise, but Snake was still the lone field operative and the mission was a desperate one. Despite that, Richard maintained that this was the most workable plan produced by the DoD situational analysis. In hindsight, perhaps I should have suspected something then. The signs of a conspiracy were there, cleverly disguised as it was in a seemingly reckless mission plan, but we failed to see it, and both Solid Snake and I were to regret our folly bitterly. "It's time, Nastasha," Richard called out as the call signal came on. The line was already live, and I nodded to him and took my position. I could feel myself growing keener, more on edge. "This is Nastasha Romanenko. A pleasure to work with you, Solid Snake. You're the nuclear expert that the Colonel mentioned?" Man, the fucking translation is all over the place. The voice that responded over the radio was, above all things, calm. Here was a man operating alone out of a deeply hostile territory, and I could sense nothing resembling tension or impatience in his tone. Instead, it was as level and unruffled as someone answering a routine telephone call at their office desk. "Impressed," I continued on. "Correct. If you have any questions about nuclear technology at all you need to do is ask. My department is military analysis, so I should be able to provide support with weapons information as well. I was called into this mission as a nuclear emergency search team consultant, and I'd like to emphasize that my cooperation was freely given. I have no intention of allowing any nuclear strikes on my watch, let alone the rogue kind. Let me work with you on this one." "You get to the point fast, don't you? There's a missile that's about to fly. A nuclear strike can never be someone else's problem, and I'm not good at standing around and twiddling my thumbs. Not that I can do a little more than advise in this case." That fact was all too obvious. Snake was the one who was putting his life on the line in Alaska, and I was safe and sound in California. Until the homeless people break in. All I could do was talk over the radio. Snake's voice became less abrupt. "It may not seem like much, but it's enough. No one's asking you to come out here and fight. That's my job. Anyway, Nastasha, I'll be counting on your help." It was a strangely comforting voice, a voice that inspired trust. "Same here," as I answered. I resolved to myself to do everything in my power to help him complete the mission. The nuclear weapons disposal plan on Shadow Moses Island dates back to 2002. It was built solely for the purpose of temporarily storing nuclear warheads slated for disposal. I started to brief Snake on the background of the disposal facility, running through the points he needed to know. My first short exchange with Solid Snake ever, I was beginning to understand why he was called the man who makes the impossible possible. The icy calm in the face of insurmountable difficulty, the absolute confidence made it suddenly seem possible that he would pull off this deadly mission. He had the power to make me believe. I grew conscious of Richard's gaze. What? Oh, just that you have a kind of glow about you when you're working. I like it. A glow. Funny. You used to call it workaholism in the past. You found it very unappealing, I recall. Time flies. People change their minds. It's called nostalgia. You'll dislike it again soon enough. Perhaps. Richard continued to look at me. Solid Snake certainly managed to live up to his reputation. Then he adroitly wove his way through the enemy's patrols and infiltrated a nuclear weapons disposal plant, where he made contact with Donald Anderson, the DARPA director. Throughout the mission, we had radio monitoring capability over Snake's every movement, thanks to his internal nanomachines. It was through this access channel that I learned a shocking fact. Donald Anderson, discovered in solitary confinement by Solid Snake, confirmed that the terrorists had full nuclear capability, and that Shadow Moses Island was the site of a field exercise for Metal Gear. Metal Gear, the very mention of that name sent me reeling. It was the ultimate weapon, a nuclear-capable bipedal tank that could launch a rapid and accurate nuclear strike from virtually any terrain, from mountains, marshlands, desert dunes. It could bestow the dubious privilege of initiating a missile strike from sites that were previously out of the question for such launch locations. For that very reason, analysts had long predicted that if brought to fruition, Metal Gear technology could rewrite the tactical map of the world. There are speculations that this unholy grail of weapons development was being pursued late last century in the South African fortress of Outer Heaven, and then in the ultra-nationalist sovereignty of Zanzibar land in Central Asia. One source went so far as to claim that a working prototype had been produced, but the weapon never made it onto the world military stage. Instead, it was destroyed by a Special Forces operative. The squad in question was Foxhound, and the operative was a man codenamed Solid Snake. I briefly wonder if it were some strange quirk of fate that had brought Snake into this latest incident, but I know Richard too well. Snake had to have been called in because of his past battles. Whoever had planned this mission had been thorough, and the more I realized the fact, the less I liked it. A few years ago, I interviewed a high-ranking DoD official and led the conversation to the subject of Metal Gear. His response at the time was that the US had very little interest in developing a weapon like Metal Gear. Not that he officially admitted that such a thing as Metal Gear existed on a purely hypothetical level, if such a technology were available. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, nuclear arsenals built to enforce the idea of mutually assured destruction had lost its justification, and the deterrent argument was losing ground. In the current multilateral world order rife with smaller regional powers, as he put it, development priority lay with cruise missile and smaller weapons with lower lethality that could be carried by stealth bombers. He also went on to know that Metal Gear, with its affinity for rough terrain, would be extremely difficult to discover and destroy. Hence, it was the perfect nuclear strike system for rogue states. He was deeply concerned that if such non-democratic sovereignties were to get a hold of Metal Gear technology, the resulting upset and imbalance of military power would lead to a massive rupture in the world order. It was a fear that I myself shared. An artifact of the Cold War. The devil's candy, created by nuclear proliferation. The devil's candy? Okay. That was what Metal Gear seemed to be. So why was this weapon, a cutting-edge technology that was politically long obsolete, being developed once again on American soil? It was possible that the Defense Department wanted to restore last century's nuclear strategy to the national agenda. Or did this new Metal Gear have something that set it far apart from Metal Gear as I knew it? Anderson had more to say. Metal Gear's launch key consisted of two separate passwords. one held by Anderson himself and the other by Kenneth Baker, the president of Armstead. Anderson's own password was already in the terrorists' hands, and he feared the same was true for Baker's. A renegade Foxhound psychic, codenamed Psycho Mantis, had already read Anderson's mind and obtained the key. The bottom line was that the terrorists could activate Metal Gear and launch the missile whenever they pleased. The worst case scenario had come true. However, Anderson revealed that there was still a way to prevent a nuclear strike. Kenneth Baker alone had the emergency override key that could be used to re-enter the launch code and cancel the missile launch. Even if the terrorists had already completed preparations for the strike, the override would reverse the process. His only hope, now riding on obtaining the override key, Snake attempted to leave the cell area with Anderson in tow. We heard terrible cries over the radio at the same time Snake did. Anderson had suddenly started to clutch at his own chest in agony, and before we could even recover from our initial shock, he was dead. Dr. Naomi Hunter, monitoring the situation from on board the USS Discovery, tentatively diagnosed the cause of death as a heart attack. Snake walked out of the cell alone in search of Kenneth Baker, leaving behind what had until recently been Donald Anderson, chief of DARPA. Alright, what exactly is going on here? I confronted Richard as soon as I confirmed Snake's safe departure. You know the situation. It was a Metal Gear field exercise being conducted in Shadow Moses. Foxhound and the next generation commandos were in charge of the exercise, and now they're threatening to use Metal Gear to launch a nuclear strike. Apparently, I didn't know about that particular situation. If you say so. I glared at Richard, but he didn't turn a hair. He knew as well as I did that I could not abandon the mission. Even if I did refuse to cooperate further, there was an entire group of DoD personnel around me that would not permit that to happen. I briefly closed my eyes and brought the recent events into focus again. What happened to Anderson? Why is he dead? This time, I could see a trace of reaction in Richard's eyes. It's hard to say from our end. Naomi thinks it was a heart attack, but... Mr. Man, thank you for the 53 months resub. I have his medical records pulled just in case. He turned and left the study, presumably to give orders to that effect. The sounds and the voice being broadcast from the radio told me that Snake was moving deeper into the complex in search of Kenneth Baker. Snake found the Armstead president in one of the underground levels. Kenneth Baker was bound to a steel girder along with multiple packets of C4 explosives. Before Snake could free Baker, he came face to face with the originator of this trap, a Foxhound operative called Revolver Ocelot. It seemed that he had anticipated Baker's rescue attempt upon receiving news of Snake's arrival. According to Naomi Hunter, the former director of Foxhound Genetic Manipulation Program, Revolver Ocelot is a former Spetsnaz. He moved into Oman. Yeah, I'm not gonna read that. The Interior Ministry Riot Squad, aka the Black Berets, and the SVR, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, as successor to the KGB's first chief directorate after the collapse of the Soviet Union, but he was unable to adapt to the new regime and dropped out. A cut has swat through the world's hotspots as mercenary before being recruited by Foxhound. He cut. Okay. As his codename indicates, Ocelot is a master marksman with a marked preference for revolvers. We could hear the gun battle between Snake and Ocelot over the radio. Ocelot was using an antique single-action army revolver against Snake's SOCOM pistol. The first single-action army revolver was manufactured in 1873. A small number of them are still in production today, but strictly for collectors and antique weapon fanciers. Using this outmoded weapon for live combat is unheard of. But Ocelot seemed to invest the vintage gun with diabolical powers. He would purposefully fire against walls and the floor, weaving a tight web of ricocheting bullets around Snake, gradually hemming him in. All we could do was silently monitor the battle. However, Snake was slowly but surely gaining the upper hand by dodging the ricochet and exploding the revolver's lengthy reload window. Finally, just as Snake was about to deliver the decisive blow, an explosion rang out. "My hand!" Ocelot's scream came a second later, followed by more explosions. "What the hell is going on?" Richard cried. The controller in charge of this data sent by Snake's nanomachine started a running commentary. "We don't know yet. I'm seeing a life sign other than those of Snake, Ocelot, or Baker." Explosions continued to boom out over the radio. "The unidentified fourth subject is knocking down girders. No sign of firearm use. Whatever it is, it's moving fast." The controller's voice rose with excitement. "The speed is well above anything a human being should be able to handle." The situation was chaotic. I could make out Ocelot's voice through the roar of collapsing metal. "Stealth camouflage! Someone left the job only half done. Can't you even die right? As for you, we'll continue this later." God, the fucking translation is a match. "You were lucky. We'll meet again." It seemed Ocelot had left the area. The explosions went on one after the other as girders crashed on the ground. In the midst of the collapse, Snake confronted what we could only guess was the fourth life sign. "Who are you?" "I'm like you. I have no name." It was not human, but artificial machine voice that answered. In spite of the metallic tones, there seemed to be, in that voice, an unspeakable pain. Baker's labor groans could be heard over the conversation. "That exoskeleton!" Suddenly, the possessor of the metal voice let loose an animal howl. The shattering scream set the communication speakers screeching, and I instinctively covered my ears to shout out the maddened sound. The cry went on, then cut out as abruptly as it begun. In the ringing silence, the controller's voice floated out, thin and hollow. "The fourth subject has disappeared." The words brought us out of a state of shock. "Can we track him?" "Negative. He's vanished. No traces." "Collect as much data as you can." I had the full results of information relayed by the nanomachines. There's an electromagnetic pattern that resembles a stealth camouflage signature. "Stealth camo and reinforced exoskeleton," Richard muttered in deep thought. "Not everything is happening according to plan, I take it?" I inquired with some sarcasm. "It's within acceptable deviation. The mission will go on as planned." For a split second, his eyes betrayed his disquiet. Then he quickly recovered his characteristic arrogance. "You just concentrate on your job." Snake had called the fourth life sign the Ninja. I could not help but wonder about the identity of the name's bearer, and what it was that accounted for the superhuman ability he had just demonstrated. Far away on Shadow Moses Island, Snake was attempting to raise the shaking Kenneth Baker back on his feet. We could hear Snake asking him about the nuclear launch code, knowing the answer even as he spoke. Baker painfully acknowledged that he had volunteered the information. His arm hung broken and useless by his side, presumably Ocelot's handiwork. According to Naomi Hunter's intelligence, Revolver Ocelot had served as a special interrogations consultant in the Soviet gulags during his days with Spetsnaz. In other words, he was an expert in torture. There was no way that the weapons technology executive, an untrained civilian, could withstand the technique of coercion developed in the cells of Lubyanka. We now had confirmation that the terrorists possessed both launch keys. The situation was more desperate than ever. Baker's response to Snake's queries about the emergency override key were almost as grim. He had entrusted a soldier, a woman who had refused to join the mutiny, with it, while they had been sharing the same cell. I caught Snake's sudden murmur. "Colonel sneeze?" The colonel was presumably Campbell. Snake seemed to know something I certainly did not. I stole a glance at Richard, but his expression was as closed as ever. He no doubt had known from the outset about the presence of Campbell's sneeze and shadow. Snake was pressing Baker, asking him whether there was a way to stop the launch without the override code. The executive gave him a name, Dr. Hal Emmerich. If it were indeed the case that the launch code were in hostile hands and the strike sequence had been started, it stood to reason that the only person who may know of a way to cancel the launch was the chief of Metal Gear Development's program. As Snake promised to search out Emmerich, Baker handed him a single optical disc. It contained, he said, all the data from the training exercise. What exercise data? He had to be referring to the Metal Gear exercise. I saw Richard raise his eyebrow sharply. Baker, oblivious to the frenzied speculation he had remotely set off, continued. Don't play dumb. I know you were sent to get this. I was now even more puzzled than ever. If Metal Gear was being developed in Shadow Moses, surely the research data was backed up somewhere outside of the Armstead lab. Not only that, but why would the president of the company have been carrying the data himself? I was apparently not alone in my disconcernment. Snake took the disc, obviously uncertain. It was clear that he, like myself, had not been briefed on the existence of the disc. The disc safely out of his hands, Baker's tone became pleading. You have to stop them. If it goes public, my company are finished. What? Doesn't Metal Gear use currently existing technology? Metal Gear itself does, but... Oh god, what did you do to me? We could hear his labored coughing as he gasped out. It can't be. It's the Pentagon bastards. So they actually went and did it. He tried to launch a snake, but reeled back in a fresh wave of pain. Still clutching his chest, he fell down, dead. It was too similar to the last moments of Donald Anderson's life. The fact had not escaped Snake. He was immediately on the radio with Campbell. Colonel, you'd better be listening real well. Now he's dead too. Snake demanded an explanation, but neither Campbell nor Dr. Hunter could provide an adequate one. Snake was clearly dissatisfied, but Campbell directed Snake to cooperate with his niece, Meryl. The only way left to prevent a nuclear strike was to obtain the emergency override key, and the key was in Meryl's hands. Snake walked away from Baker's body in search of the elusive commando. Kenneth Baker had been colluding with Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, to secretly develop a new Metal Gear on the government's so-called black budget. My later investigations revealed that regular payments in tens of thousands of dollars had been made to the corporate account of a firm with which Anderson's wife ostensibly acted as a consultant. The Armstead payoff into this dummy company had started several years ago. The total amount is difficult to estimate, but there is little doubt Anderson had been bribed to the tune of an astronomical sum. Even the government black budget had limits, however. I recall the rumor from some years before that before the Anderson payoff started. The CNO, Chief of Naval Operations, at the time had a classified pet project, and the scuttlebutt was that it involved the construction of a completely new type of battleship. Just what kind of ship was never revealed, since the entire program fell apart after the CNO suddenly passed away. The unexpected death coincided with Armstead's launch of the Metal Gear development program. The black budget earmarked for the CNO's little project must have been freed up by his death. The question was whether it had been freed up for allocation to the new Metal Gear development. The manner of the CNO's death was officially ruled as a suicide, but I could not help recall the theories to the contrary that had made its rounds back then. Whatever the background, Anderson and Baker's deaths could not be a coincidence. Anderson's dying words included a reference to the Pentagon, and I was certain that there was more to it than met the eye. Did they mess it up? It was Baker's words. Well, I guess Anderson as well, yeah. But what about the Pentagon? That's right, yeah, it's both of them. Now that Baker is dead as well, are you looking into his medical records too? I asked Richard. We'll do that, just as a precaution. He did not seem particularly disturbed. It may have been for the best anyway. Having to babysit a senior citizen with a broken arm sure wasn't going to help Snake with his mission. You haven't changed a bit, I see. What? The bad boy act of yours. You only talk like an insensitive jerk to divert attention from something. I wonder what you're hiding. Richard turned away. Nothing. There's nothing to hide. Having successfully made radio contact with Merrill, Colonel Campbell's niece, Solid Snake agreed to put off a rendezvous with her in favor of rescuing Dr. Hal Emmerich, the chief of Metal Gear Development. He reached the lab just as Ninja was attempting to attack Dr. Emmerich, and the two fighters immediately squared off. Snake and the ninja launched into a silent hand-to-hand combat. A balletic exchange of blows seemed almost to serve as a private dialogue. The fighting seemed interminable to us as we followed over the radio, but just as in the last encounter, the ninja suddenly let loose an inhuman howl and vanished into the maelstrom of its ragged echo. It was our second encounter with the ninja, and we were as in the dark about him as ever. But Snake had recognized something during the battle, and he raised Campbell on the radio. Gray Fox, Colonel, that ninja is Gray Fox. Impossible. You yourself in Zanzibar land. We could hear the perturbation in Campbell's voice. Fucking Twin Snakes line. Naomi Hunter suddenly cut in. Yes, he was supposed to have been killed, but he wasn't. Dr. Hunter revealed that her predecessor at the helm of Foxhound's genetic treatment program, one Dr. Clark, had been conducting human testing. Gray Fox, the alpha soldier of Foxhound and the only member allowed the Fox designation, was the subject. After he had been shipped back from Zanzibar land mortally wounded, his superior physical abilities and combat skills had marked him as an ideal test subject for genetic manipulation and skeletal reinforcement experiments. He was listed as killed in action, but kept alive in a lab. I could not help but note with some surprise the emotional tone in which the normally collected geneticists described these events. When Snake asked why she had not volunteered the truth of the ninja's identity earlier, Naomi had only a terse reply. It was classified information. According to the records she had seen, the subject, Gray Fox, had died in an accidental lab explosion 2 years ago. I turned to Richard. Is this true? What's true? Accident in the lab. It's true. The cause of the explosion was never determined. Dr. Clark died in the accident, and the only remains they could find of Gray Fox were fragments of the reinforced skeleton. So Naomi wasn't the only one who knew about this and didn't say anything. It was classified information, Richard mimicked. Snake secured Dr. Emmerich after the ninja's departure. Amazingly enough, the engineer had believed Metal Gear to be a portable tactical missile defense system rather than a nuclear-capable tank. It was a peculiar irony that the chief developer himself had been unaware that the project was one of offense rather than defense. On discovering that he had been deceived, Dr. Emmerich volunteered his expertise to Snake. He mentioned his grandfather's involvement in the Manhattan Project, and the ethical turmoil the man had carried with him to the end of his days as a result. Ironically enough, the older scientist's son, Hal Emmerich's father, was born the day the atomic bomb had found Hiroshima. 3 generations of Emmerich men. It was scary to sin nuclear war in our DNA. God's got a sense of humor, alright. We could hear the pain and the regret in Dr. Emmerich's voice. He seemed genuinely upset that the technology he had developed purely for the furthering of knowledge and betterment of mankind had been exploited for weapons development. You may call me harsh, but I felt little sympathy for him. That's why it's harsh. Technological and scientific innovation need not have direct bearing on nuclear or virological research to contribute to making weapons of mass destruction. After all, the ninja was born of genetic engineering and cybernetic research, which could easily have helped a civilian rather than improved upon a soldier. Scientists cannot plead naivety to the practical products of their own research. The consequences must be anticipated, and the ethical burden of newly developed technology must ultimately rest with the individual researcher. I wonder if Dr. Emmerich would ever realize that honest. Freed from the laboratory where he was being held, Emery cloaked himself with a stealth camouflage of his own making and promised to keep out of sight. With the stealth camo, he could easily evade the terrorist surveillance. His rescue target safe, Snake departed for a rendezvous with Meryl. Snake's objective was to meet with Meryl and re-enter the launch code using her override key, outwitting the Foxhound's psychic Psychomantis all the while. To this end, he headed towards the hangar where Metal Gear was being stored. He headed towards where Meryl's dump truck was being stored. Best laid plans, Meryl was ambushed on the way by the Foxhound sharpshooter Sniper Wolf. Snake, attempting to rescue the wounded commando, was himself captured. He was taken to the terrorist command post, still unconscious, stripped of all his gear. However, his cochlear implant radio passed unnoticed, and we could hear the terrorists conferring about the incapacitated operative. Ooh, this is when Snake is passed out. We gathered from their talk that the preparations for the nuclear launch were complete. Richard was unusually intent on identifying the individual terrorists in the room. From the voices involved in the conversation, we confirmed the presence of Sniper Wolf, Revolver Ocelot, and the leader of this uprising himself, Liquid Snake. What little I knew of Liquid Snake was troubling, and it came entirely from the slim file folder Richard showed me just prior to the mission commencement. The man with the same designation as Solid Snake was recruited into Foxhound after Solid Snake's departure from the unit. His fighting skills were formidable, and he quickly rose to leadership position in Foxhound's field operation team. His real name, place of origin, and other information remain classified. Only a single photograph accompanied the documents, and I had not been able to contain my astonishment at the sight of it. It's not a mistake. That is Liquid Snake, said Richard, echoing my thoughts. But, wow. The face in the photo was a spitting image of Solid Snake. I wouldn't know, but once the two snakes run into each other, something may come out. His words were non-committal, but Richard's tone spoke volumes. And now, the two snakes, Solid and Liquid, had indeed come face to face. But Liquid had little to say. So long, brother. He called out before turning and walking away. He said a lot more in the torture room, but okay. I guess he didn't say much to Snake, though. The voice was full of hatred, but there was also something in it that seemed to confirm and gleefully anticipate another meeting. What the fuck? Why this was as mysterious to me. Okay, I fucked up. Why this was so mysterious as to me as the reason he called Solid. Oh, why this was so mysterious to me as the reason why he called Solid Snake brother. That fucked me up for a second there. Why this was so was as mysterious to me as the reason why he called Solid Snake brother. God, that is not good fucking writing, Agnes Kaku. That tripped me up. Why this was as mysterious to me as the reason why he called Solid Snake brother. There we go. I would not find out the truth until a little later. What awaited Snake after his brief encounter with Liquid was Ocelot's KGB-tested interrogation techniques. Ocelot apparently had no interest in extracting information, but rather appeared to be enjoying the acts of torture for their own sake. Snake's ragged gasp echoed from the radio in the silence of the control room. The heart rate and other psychological data transmitted by his nanomachines graphically demonstrated the extent of his suffering. All we could do was listen and wait. After Ocelot was done, the battered Snake was taken to a cell. Campbell soon established radio contact with him, but Snake had some hard questions for his former CO instead. He had realized that Metal Gear was a nuclear delivery system, and for once, Campbell was at a loss for an answer. "So you did know about this all along," Snake rasped out bitterly. Campbell continued to be silent. It was all confirmation Snake needed. "You should have told me. I'm sorry." "Pawns don't need to know, is that it?" "You've changed." Campbell had no rebuttal in Snake's barbs. According to Campbell, even the president had apparently been unaware of the existence of Project Rex until the day before. To make matters more complicated, he was due to meet with the Russian president the following day for formal signing of START 3. The treaty stipulated further reduction of nuclear arsenal, picking up where START 2 left off. The agreement would reduce the number of Russian and American tactical ballistic missiles to somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500, and the signing was a historic event that had been made possible by a long and arduous process. If the fact that a new nuclear weapon was being developed by the United States were made public, there was a significant chance that the signing would never take place. Worse still, the loss of confidence in America's commitment to non-proliferation could create international turmoil. The government clearly had every reason to keep the situation under wraps, and there were ample indications that the terrorists had counted on the fact. The timing of this takeover, as well as the 24-hour deadline, said as much. Campbell continued to plead his case with Snake. "Snake, you got to stop them. Sing it to someone else." Yes, remember the famous line from MGS1? "Sing it to someone else." You're the only hope we have. "Alright then, tell me what this new warhead is about." "I told you, I don't know. I don't believe you." "If the situation is so desperate, why don't you give in to their demands? Give him Big Boss's body. It's just a corpse." "That's not an option." Campbell was wondering under the barrage of Snake's questions. "Is there a reason you can't comply with that demand? A reason you haven't told me?" Naomi broke in as Campbell fell silent. The president's passed a number of policies that severely restrict genetic engineering on humans. He can't afford to have the public know about the military's use of genetically enhanced soldiers. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole fucking problem with MGS2's translation not getting the lines are supposed to be the same from MGS1. Oh well. "Is that really all there is to it?" Campbell did not reply. I received a call from Snake soon after. Captive, alone in enemy territory, unable to trust his own mission controllers to tell him the truth. There was little I could say to help a man in Snake's situation. Capture does not mean defeat. Stay vigilant for a chance to escape, and don't give up. When you see a chance, take it. I had doubts about the effectiveness of those words coming from someone with no combat experience, but it was the best I could offer. We had no choice but to trust in Snake's abilities. As I closed the radio channel, I caught Richard studying me. "Yes, you're very passionate about this job. Do you object? It's the job you forced on me after all." "No, but I admit that I'm a little jealous." "Ah, the jealousy act. Yes, I know that one too." Richard averted his eyes. "I wouldn't call it an act No, forget it." He lit a cigarette, Chesterfield, the same brand as Humphrey Bogart. "You still smoke the same brand." "You know me. Once I decide I like something, I can't kick the habit. Cigarette, line of work, woman, everything." He didn't look at me as he replied. The torture was conducted again and again, solely for the purpose of breaking Snake. He held out each time, but his strength was steadily ebbing, and the voice we heard over the radio was growing more labored. "Naomi, talk to me. Say something to take my mind off the pain. What do you want me to talk about? Anything. I'm not good at finding things to talk about. Tell me about yourself. Myself? That's not an easy topic for me. Got any family? It's not a very happy story. That's not an easy topic for me. I don't have any family. I guess it was one person who called himself my father. We're hasty. Dead. But by my own hands. I was even more taken aback by what Campbell volunteered next. Big Boss. What? Big Boss? I had no idea. There's no way you could. Campbell elaborated to Naomi. It was 6 years ago. In Zanzibar land. Only Snake and I know the real truth of what happened there. Oh God, was Big Boss really your father? Naomi still seemed disbelieving. That's what he said. That's all I know. And you were able to kill him? Knowing that? Yup. How? Naomi asked fiercely in the script that doesn't suck. There was a pause before Snake answered. It's what he wanted. Besides, some men just need killing. That's patricide. Yup. That's the trauma Mantis was talking about. The one we share in common. Snake's voice was faint as we had heard. Is that why you left Foxhound? Maybe. I can't deny that it felt good to lose myself. It's easy to do that in Alaska. The fuck? Let's just say that I need to be alone for a while, and Alaska was the perfect place. After a moment of silence, Naomi confided in a low voice. I don't really have a family of my own either. Just a big brother who put me through school. We weren't even blood related, and he was much older than me. Where is he now? Naomi's reply was deeply pained. He's dead. There was deep sorrow in her voice, and I thought something more. The stepbrother who put her through school. I wasn't told about that. Richard muttered. There was suspicion in his voice, and puzzlingly enough, a hint of anger. I opened the personnel profile of Naomi. Naomi Hunt, born in New York City, 1980X, PhD in genetics, recruited by industry agent ATGC soon after completing doctoral program, moved to California's so-called biotech Bay Area, led several genetic therapy programs, until recruited by Foxhound to fill the post of chief geneticist as a result of her accomplishments in this field. Parents died in a car collision when Naomi was 2 years old. One brother, 10 years her senior, a U.S. Marine, killed in training-related accident when Naomi was 17. Oh, interesting. Richard thought for a minute, then scribbled something in his notebook. Summoning one of his men, he tore the page out and handed it to him. Write this message to the skipper USS Discovery. Make sure that Campbell doesn't know about it. What are you plotting now? I knew even as I asked that Richard would not respond. The torture was repeated time and again, but Snake managed to take advantage of the guard's waning vigilance and escape. The location and the fate of his fellow hostage, Merrill, eluded us. Evading the intense manhunt that followed, Snake still refused to stray from the course that led to the Metal Gear hangar. What drove him? Guilt from Merrill's capture and an urge to avenge her? A sense of duty to the mission? The will to stop the carnage of a nuclear strike? None of them seemed to apply to Snake. He was an enigma. We could do little but watch over him as he ran, wounded and exhausted. After successfully taking on Sniper Wolf as she re-emerged for an ambush, Snake closed in. What, did they skip the hind completely? Snake closed in on Metal Gear hangar only to discover Vulcan Raven blocking his way. Holy shit, they just compressed the whole fucking escape, hind, communications towers, Disc 2, snowfield, blast furnace. One little sentence. Yeah, they whooped it. Only to discover Vulcan Raven blocking his way. The giant Foxhound operative, armed with a fighter plane Gatling gun, was a daunting enemy. In the end, however, Snake eventually prevailed. The stricken raven, leaning against the wall, started to speak as Snake approached him. There are some breeds of snake that nature never intended. I think you and the boss belong to one of those. Jesus, I'm so glad Agnes Kaku didn't do I'm just one. Holy shit. Go and settle with him. I'll be watching from above. The dying raven then dropped a bombshell. I'll give you one clue. The man you saw die before your eyes. It was not the DARPA chief. It was Decoy Octopus, a member of Foxhound. He was a master of disguise, but he couldn't fool the Angel of Death. Angel of Death? Is he dead? Raven did not answer Snake's sharp query. Snake tried another tack. Why go through all the trouble? Why impersonate the chief? Raven smiled faintly. Wait, let me see. What's the real line from MGS1? That's all the clue you're going to get. Everything else you'll have to figure out yourself. That is the end of my hint. A few minutes later, Vulcan Raven died. What the fuck is that word? Richard was chagrined. Chagrined. Okay, new word. Fucking archaic. Feel distressed or humiliated. Okay, so that's how it was. They had us completely fooled. Why would Octopus impersonate Anderson? I asked. I don't know. Maybe to get information out of Snake. That would mean that they knew Snake was coming. Richard stubbed out a cigarette without answering. His face was expressionless, but I knew exactly what he was thinking. We had a leak. I'm gonna have a leak right now. Alright, we took a leak. While Richard and I were talking, a call was made to Snake. Snake, it's me. Master, Snake answered. It was apparently Master Miller. I need to talk to you about Naomi Hunter. Turn monitor off. Miller had barely finished his instruction before Campbell cut in. What about Naomi? Miller made an exasperated sound. It was clear that he had not intended Campbell to hear what he had to say. Colonel, is Naomi there? Snake asked. No, she's trying to catch up on her sleep. Okay. Campbell turned his attention back to Miller. What were you saying about Dr. Hunter? Alright, maybe it's better that the Colonel hears about this now, Miller said resignedly. Go on, urged Snake. That's not the real Naomi Hunter you're working with, Colonel. What? Campbell raised his voice, astounded. Miller continued coolly. Naomi Hunter does not exist, or rather, she did. She went missing in the Middle East some time ago. This imposter must have gotten a hold of her identity somehow. There were a number of ways to obtain someone's social security number and commit identity theft, certainly. But Dr. Naomi Hunter, an imposter? Who is she really then? Campbell was agitated, but Miller remained cool as ice. She must be some kind of spy. A spy? Yes, sent in to ensure this mission's failure. Are you saying that she's working with the terrorists? Campbell's tone was disbelieving, but Snake backed up his former instructor. I don't want to believe it either, Colonel, but she is working with Foxhound. So it would not be surprising if she took part in the insurrection, Campbell finished dully, as though Snake's words hadn't crystallized in his own doubts. Or she could be working for another organization, Miller suggested. Another? A different group? It couldn't be. As Campbell trailed off, Miller spoke up, his tone ruthless. Place her under arrest. Take her into custody, Colonel. What? She has betrayed us. She needs to be arrested and interrogated to find out what her objective is. If she's one of our spies, then we're in deep trouble, Campbell murmured. Miller pounced on the gravity of the colonel's tone. What are you talking about? Oh, nothing. Campbell tried to recover himself. Did you let her in some kind of vital secret or something? Campbell remained silent, but Miller pressed on. Does that have anything to do with the deaths of DARPA chief and Donald Anderson, Decoy Octopus, and Armstead president? I have no idea. Clearly, Campbell knew something. It was equally obvious that he had no intention of revealing what he was privy to. Perhaps sensing that fact, Miller dropped the pursuit abruptly. In any case, it's too dangerous to retain her in the mission. God. But wait a minute. Without her, we can't complete this mission. Campbell was being too insistent about Dr. Hunter's value. I had to wonder if this was indeed the case, that he had trusted her with highly classified information. Snake was also suspicious. More secrets, Colonel? Give me some time. I'll have her background and movements rechecked. That was all Campbell could say. Hurry, then. Find out what she wants as quickly as possible. Miller was unrelenting. Of course, Campbell agreed reluctantly. Snake, give me some time. I don't have any time left for you, Snake growled bitterly. What's the deal? I said to Richard. Is Miller right about Naomi? I don't know, to be honest. It's obvious that there were things in Dr. Hunter's past that I didn't know about. I'm having them go over her background again. Richard was visibly upset, a rare occurrence. I suddenly wondered there had been something between him and Naomi. I suddenly wondered whether there had been something between him and Naomi, but okay. Richard lit a cigarette and continued in a more composed tone. But if what Miller said about Naomi is true, it raises questions about him in turn. Why do you say that? He's supposed to be in his cabin in Alaska, so I hear. How did he manage to find out so much about Naomi by himself and from the middle of nowhere when the DIA investigators couldn't? Richard called one of his men over and ordered them to look into Miller's activities. You check up even one of your own? I asked the agent as the agent hurried away. How do you know he's one of our own? Richard shot back, blowing a stream of smoke. Did I assume you don't trust me either? You're the one who doesn't trust me. Never have, he said quietly, and ground his cigarette into the ashtray. Snake had finally reached the Metal Gear hangar and stood in the shadow of the machine's 50-foot tall bulk. But considering Metal Gear's state-of-the-art composite armor and Snake's limited arsenal, it was improbable that he would destroy the tank while evading enemy patrols. The most practical avenue of attack was to re-enter the launch code using the override key and thereby cancel the scheduled nuclear strike. As Snake methodically searched for the code entry interface, Emmerich radioed in. He had been making himself useful by breaking into Baker's protected files. From these, he had pieced together the true nature of Metal Gear and its prototype warheads. According to Emmerich, the weapon used a built-in railgun to fire the ballistic missiles clear of the atmosphere. The missile would then automatically realign itself, re-enter the atmosphere on its designated trajectory toward the target. I understood exactly what all this meant, and the knowledge left me cold. Normally, ballistic missiles go through 4 phases from launch to impact. The first phase is the boost phase, which consists of the time between the missile's launch and the point at which it leaves the atmosphere and exhausts its supply of rocket propellant. Following the burnout, the rocket enters the post-boost phase, which concludes with the separation of the re-entry vehicle that contains the warhead. The third stage is the mid-course phase, in which the re-entry vehicle separates and achieves a controlled descent back into the atmosphere. The warhead's re-entry into the atmosphere and its arrival at the target marked the fourth and terminal phase. Current missile defense system detect incoming ballistic missiles by scanning for the rocket burn that takes place during the missile's boost stage. However, Metal Gear's missile technology employs a railgun rather than conventional rocket propulsion to achieve boost stage acceleration. As a result, there is nothing for existing missile defense systems to detect. The railgun's effectiveness is nothing short of amazing, with a range of over 3,000 miles, rivaling that of mid-range ballistic missiles. It reliably homes in within 170 feet of the target 50% of the time, placing it in the same class as high-end ICBMs. The ability of Metal Gear to conquer virtually all terrain means that the railgun can launch a stealthy nuclear strike from almost any spot on the globe. This invisible attack would make it impossible for anyone to pinpoint the origin of a given missile even in the event of a strike. Without a clear aggressor to retaliate against, the concept of mutually assured destruction falls apart. Without the fear of MAD, the existing rules of nuclear non-engagement would no longer apply, and the world would fall into chaos. Give me a second, guys. Okay, we're doing this. Snake had a few things to say to Campbell after learning the truth. He knew as well as anyone that if the fact that the US had been developing a new breed of nuclear weapons were made public on the eve of START 3, negotiations would break down and the US would suffer devastating embarrassment. Did you know about this, Colonel? I really am sorry, Snake. You really have changed. Won't make any excuses. Snake, you got to hear this. Dr. Emery broke in, ignoring Campbell. New missiles were complete in simulation only. That's why they had to perform this exercise, to get field data that would back up their simulation results. How did the exercise go? Snake asked. Emmerich's reply was discouraging. It seems to have gone better than they expected, but I can't find any of the data. You think that the data as important as that would be carefully recorded? It was. It's the optical disc that Baker gave me. What? Do you still have it? Campbell exclaimed hopefully. No, Ocelot took it, Snake replied, bitterly. It must have happened when he was hostage. Did this mean that Ocelot had known of the existence of the exercise data beforehand? This doesn't look good, Campbell murmured, deep in thought. I glared at Richard. You knew about this too, didn't you? Knew what? Yeah, I don't know what the fuck was going on here, but... yeah, we just went with the original, I'm just one-lines. The small matter of this new nuclear weapon technology. Richard shrugged. If I had told you, would you have cooperated? You probably would have tried to leak it to some media contact. And that would have forced our hand. He left it at that. Would he have had to kill me in interest in national security? Something like that, I suppose. In the world Richard inhabited, preserving secrets always merited higher consideration than human life. But I was privy to that secret now. What would happen once the mission ended? I felt a chill go down my spine as I considered the possibilities. Richard was quietly puffing on his cigarette. How many fucking cigarettes did Ames smoke? I guess Nastasha was smoking a lot too. He had too many men with him, working for him every moment. There was no way I could simply walk out of this house. But I had something up my sleeve as well, and I was not about to let myself be exploited without a fight. I looked over my PC, the screensaver had kicked in, and geometric patterns flitted across the dark monitor. I slipped my PDA into my pocket and headed for the bathroom to send some mail. One of Richard's men trotted over with a slip of paper. Richard studied it, and after some consideration raised Campbell on the radio. What can I do for you, Major Ames? Oh, he's a major at this point. Interesting. I think they promote him to colonel for this. Campbell's tone was openly hostile, but Richard paid no heed. Colonel Campbell, I'd like you to start interrogating Naomi Hunter. Interrogate her? What are you talking about? Campbell said sharply. There are suspicious points about Dr. Hunter's background, as you've heard. I've therefore sent one of my men over there to talk to her, but she seems reluctant to cooperate. Richard lit another cigarette. But she's taking a nap, the colonel insisted. Actually, she's not. In reality, she's been taken into my agent's custody. How dare you? Campbell barked angrily. Richard was unfazed. If, as Master Miller charged, Naomi Hunter has falsified her identity and is in communication with the enemy, there are serious repercussions. I trust you understand. Foxdie, Campbell groaned. Foxdie? This was something new. This mission was like an onion, with layer after layer of secret intent. Chesterfields. He smokes Chesterfields. She won't talk to my agent. She may talk to you. Find out from Naomi who she is and what she's doing here. Absolutely not. I didn't take orders from you, and I'm having Dr. Hunter freed immediately. What makes you think you can do such a thing? Replied Richard, exhaling a cloud of smoke. There was a long silence. Who exactly the hell are you? I could hear the barely suppressed rage in Campbell's voice. The DIA wouldn't have the authority to send a man into a Navy submarine and hold someone prisoner. Richard did not answer. Campbell continued. And that's not the only thing. Nothing has been done throughout the usual channels, including the way you induced Snake and I to cooperate. This mission isn't even official business, is it? So who else can mount such a major operation? Campbell suddenly broke off, as though struck by something. Is it possible that... The Patriots? He murmured. The Patriots. Richard ignored Campbell's outburst. Does it matter what I am? It doesn't change the fact that your life, not to mention your precious Meryl's life, is in my hands. Isn't that right? This time it was Campbell's turn to be silent. I had never suspected that his participation in this mission had been arranged by force. The colonel was literally fighting for his and his niece's life. Think it over carefully, Colonel. Richard's voice was the coldest I had ever heard. There was no reply from Campbell, and Snake has no need to know about any of this. We need his full cooperation at this point. Just tell him that Naomi was a terrorist spy and was apprehended while sending them a coded transmission. Do you expect me to betray a friend? Keep him in the dark? Campbell objected furiously. A friend? Are you referring to Snake? Richard smiled coolly. Do you really think he considers you a friend anymore? He had hit a sore spot. But Snake literally just says it in the torture before this, so I don't know. During the torture. Campbell had no answer. Richard moved in for the kill. You already lied to him too many times. Against my will. Under your threats. Campbell was roaring, but Richard barely seemed to register his anger. Certainly, but that's not an issue. You were, after all, giving him false information and relaying false orders to him of your own accord. Then there's Foxdie. I could almost see Campbell grinding his teeth in frustration and rage. Do you still have the right to call yourself his friend? There was nothing Campbell could say. You will cooperate with us. Understood? Understood. The transmission ended. Who are the Patriots? The Trollolololo. Richard looked away towards another direction at my query. What are you talking about? Don't bullshit me. He turned towards me. His gaze was icy. Nothing you need to know about. By the way, not that I need to remind you, but don't mention to Snake things that don't concern him. And if I do... Richard's stony silence answered my uncompleted question. I was too far into this business, and suddenly seemed to sense danger everywhere. What do you intend to do with me once this mission is over? Nothing. Don't expect me to believe you. Richard allowed himself a brief, oddly sad smile. I suppose I can't. In the meantime, Snake was inching towards the launch code entry interface. At that point, he received a call from Master Miller. Snake, we need to talk about Naomi Hunter. The Colonel's looking into that. Turn the monitor off. Alright, it's off. Mission control is out of the loop. No one else can hear us. What is this about Naomi? Snake believed that he has switched us off, but I could still hear everything. Radio malfunction? I guess not. Someone had made sure that nothing could get past mission control ever. I had a more than good idea who that someone was. But Master Miller obviously did not. Sorry about that, anyone Campbell over here. What is this about? Snake repeated. I have a contact at the Pentagon. He told me that a new assassination tool had been recently developed under DIA guidance. I looked over at Richard but pretended not to notice. The assassination weapon? Snake was asking. Snake, have you ever heard of something called fox dye? I tensed. There was that word again. First Richard, then Campbell, now Miller. It seems to be a virus that can target a specific individual. I don't know the details, Miller continued. Richard remained expressionless next to me. So, what are you getting at? Snake raised his voice slightly, sounding annoyed by Miller's runabout methods. It's too similar. What is? The cause of death. Didn't the DARPA chief and Armstead president, Decoy Octopus, die of a heart attack? Yeah? Well, it seems that fox dye kills its victim by simulating a heart attack. After a moment, Snake spoke up. Are you saying that Naomi was the one who is behind it? Damn it, these fucking retranslated MGS1 lines, man. Snake, think. Didn't Naomi give you some kind of injection? The nanomachines, Snake murmured. Snake had in fact been injected with nanomachines, an anti-hypothermia compound, before the start of the mission. Was Miller suggesting that there was a killing virus in the mix as well? One thing's for certain. She is in the best position to perform this kind of sabotage, but we still don't know what her motive or objective. What about the Colonel? Snake asked after a lengthy silence. His tone brooding and full of doubts. I don't know, and I don't think he's interrogated her yet either. Alright, I'll ask him myself. Colonel, what's new with the Naomi situation? Once he was off the radio with Miller, Snake called Campbell. I just placed Naomi under arrest. Arrest? She was sending coded messages towards the Alaskan base. I didn't want to believe it either, but she must be working with the terrorists. Are you sure? There's very little doubt. She's being interrogated right now. What kind of interrogation? I don't want to resort to force, but we don't have any... What the fuck? Thiopental on hand. But we don't even have any sodium pentothal here. Well, I like to avoid the rough stuff, but we don't even have any sodium pentothal here. Let me know if you learn anything. Unaware of the machinations behind this latest development, Snake ended the communication. I longed to tell him the truth, but knew that Richard and his men would never allow that to happen. Despite his growing doubts, Snake continued to penetrate deeper into and between the lettuce into the hangar. He had almost reached the code interface when the call suddenly came in. Snake, can you hear me? It's Naomi. Naomi! What the hell? Snake exclaimed in surprise. Oh my god, they had the whole fucking Naomi call retranslated here. Richard tensed and leaned forward. I'm on a different codec. Campbell with the others are busy right now. I'm on a different codec. The Colonel and the others haven't noticed yet. Naomi, is it true what the Colonel said? Yes, but not everything I told you is a lie. Her voice was sorrowful. Who are you? I don't know myself. I don't know what my parents looked like, what they were called. I bought my identity with hard cash. What the fuck? Remember I told you, but the reason I told you, oh fuck, we're getting into genetic research was true. because you want to know yourself. Yes, I don't know what I am, my ethnic background, age. Naomi. Oh shit, Fever, thank you so much for the 10 gifts of subs. There was a pause before Naomi started speaking again in a rush. I was found sometime in Rhodesia in the 80s. Dirty little orphan. Rhodesia? What's now known as Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe used to be a British colony, you know? It was but things fucking changed all this shit, man. There were lots of Indian laborers around. Maybe that's where I got my skin color from, but I'm not even sure of that. Naomi, why dwell on the past? If you can understand who you are now, isn't that all that really matters? Understand who I am? Why should I? No one else tries to understand me. I was always searching for myself alone until I met my big brother. And him. Your big brother? Snake asked. Yes, Frank Yeager. What? Snake was taken aback. What? He was a child soldier too? What the fuck? Okay. He found me almost dead of starvation on the bank of the Zambezi River and fed me from his own small ration of food. Child soldiers. It is not rare for children to participate in wars as combatants in many of the most conflict-ravaged regions of the world. This is especially true for those developing nations where minors account for the majority of the entire population. A harsh regimen can and does turn innocent children into the most brutal of soldiers. In many cases, various drugs are used to numb the natural fear response. Okay, so they're just making the connection with Raiden for later, I guess. Because none of the shit in MGS1 is child soldier talk. During the Naomi call. Okay. The result is and marks them out for posting to the front lines of the fiercest battles and scouting duties in the minefields. Yes, the man who you destroy was my brother and my only family, Naomi said quietly. No, Gray Fox? Snake could not hide his perturbation. We survived the hell together, Frankie and I. He protected me. It was my one connection. What is this bullshit? It was everything to me. He was my only witness to my existence. And the only one who made me feel like a real human being. Okay. And he brought you back to the States. No, I was in Mozambique when he came. He? You mean Big Boss? Yes, he led us here, finally met us free. But Frank went with Big Boss back to the wars, and when he came home to me, he was... Naomi broke off. The silence spoke of smoldering anger, of irreparable loss. I promised myself that I would get you. I vowed revenge. No. I promised myself that I would get you. You killed my benefactor and sent my brother home a cripple. I vowed revenge and joined Foxhound because I knew it was the... I'm trying to remember the original lines. Maybe I should have done this, but I'm just one script in front of me. Yeah, but it's all fucked up here, man. That's so sad. I know it was my best chance to meet you, and I prayed for the day that I would. So, were your prayers answered? Snake seemed to be taking all this in stride. He was no doubt accustomed to being target of enmity of others. Yes, 2 long years. To kill me? Is that all you cared about? Yes, 2 long years. It was like some twisted obsession. Yearning for revenge. It's almost like being in love. Holy shit. Do you still hate me? No, I was partly wrong about you. There was a trace of hesitation in Naomi's voice. Was it... Naomi, that doctor? Did you kill that doctor too? Dr. Clark? No, that was my brother. I covered it up and helped him escape. Something like that. Okay, this whole script is just fucked up, so I'm just gonna have to read whatever's on here, I guess. And an easy silence fell. That ninja, Gray Fox, so he came here to kill me? Wait, no, I'm supposed to read the real thing, or the fake script here. I don't think so. Frank is here to fight you, nothing more. I couldn't make sense of it at first, but I think I know now. A kind of a duel. He lives only for that, I think. Fox, Snake murmured, as though remembering the man who had once been his comrade. Tell me something, Naomi, he said a short while later. About Foxdie? She said in a low, pained, sleepy voice if you're playing Twin Snakes. Foxdie is a retrovirus that kills only specific people. First, it infects the person's macrophages. Foxdie is a smart virus with an oxygen chain that responds only to specific patterns in the cells. Wait, the oxygen is what recognizes the target DNA sequence? Those enzymes. They recognize the target's DNA? The fuck is this about oxygen, man? Okay. Once the recognition oxygen responds, Foxdie repurposes the macrophage's cellular structure to create TNF alpha. Not epsilon? Why is it TNF epsilon and I'm just what? What? Naomi had regained her old calm as she fielded Snake's question. What does that mean? It's a type of cytosine, a peptide that triggers cells' death. The TNF alpha travels through the bloodstream to the heart, where it binds to the receptors of cardiac cells. And that causes a heart attack? The affected cells undergo rapid apoptosis, and the owner of the heart dies. The owner of that heart. Apoptosis, however they mispronounce it. I remember that. Programmed cell death for damaged cells. Snake murmured. You mean the heart cells commit suicide? Tense silence descended once again. Naomi. Yes. You must have programmed that thing to kill me too, right? Naomi remained silent. Do I have any time left? Still no answer. Naomi. I don't blame you for wanting me death, but I can't go yet. I still have a job to do. Snake, listen. I'm not the one who made the decision to use Foxdie. Naomi burst out. You're not, or you weren't. You were injected with Foxdie as a part of this operation. I just wanted to let you know that. Now, that is not the whole truth. Snake, the real thing I wanted to tell you is... Naomi. Naomi was struggling for words when suddenly a male voice barked behind her. Hey, what are you doing? Naomi cried out sharply. She must have been spotted by one of Richard's toughs. Thugs. I don't know. I could hear the sound of scuffle over a radio. Snake. With that last grasp, Naomi faded out of earshot. Naomi. Snake called out, but it was Campbell that answered him. Snake, I can't allow Naomi... Fuck, I don't remember. I can't permit you to communicate with Naomi. What are you talking about? She's officially out of this mission. What did you do with her? How was infecting me part of the plan? What did she mean when she said a Foxdie was a part of this operation? Colonel, let me talk to her. I won't. She's under arrest. Colonel. You double-crossed me. I could hear the rage in Snake's voice. This is perfect. This is perfect with Twin Snakes. Colonel, you double-crossed me. Colonel, you sold me out, didn't you? Twin Snakes double-cross. I could hear the rage in Snake's voice because I wasn't playing Twin Snakes. Don't waste your energy thinking about things you can't change, Campbell said. His voice carefully guarded against any emotion. Stopping that Metal Gear is your first priority. Don't forget that. I can't believe Naomi was Gray Fox's foster sister, Richard murmured bitterly. Are you happy? You know who she is now, after all. I wouldn't say that. Richard's expression was complex. She says she wasn't the one who deployed Foxdie. I decided to risk putting out a feeler. Richard said nothing, and that told me everything I needed to know. It was you, wasn't it? Yes. I was taken aback by his ready admission. Foxdie was one of my projects, and Naomi was a top-notch professional. The Foxdie Richard had hit a brick wall when she pitched herself to us. She'd somehow heard that we were looking for a genetic engineering expert. As soon as she joined the team, the project took off in a major way. Richard paused, then plunged ahead. I assigned her to lead the development effort. When the virus was finally engineered, it was she that named it Foxdie. What I thought was dedication to her work was actually thirst for vengeance. Such a lust for revenge. She didn't let that slip, not once, he murmured ruefully. I knew what his relationship had been with Naomi when I studied his face. You were seeing. Oh, wait, Ames was fucking Naomi too? I forgot about that. You were seeing her. She was using me, he corrected and gave a hollow laugh. At that point, one of his men came carrying over. Damn, I forgot that Ames were fucking Naomi too. Damn. Damn, Ames and Jennifer and Nastasia. What a guy. After an urgent whisper, Richard's face grew grim. What happened? Master Miller wasn't Master Miller. Richard was visibly shaken. What? The man I sent to investigate Miller just reported in. They found Miller murdered in his home up in Alaska. Who was it that we were talking to then? But there was no one who could provide an answer to that question. Around the same time as Shadow Moses, Snake had finally made it past the enemy's defenses and successfully re-entered the launch code. Something was amiss. If the code was accepted, the alarm was triggered. Launch code entered. An electronic voice intoned, "All systems ready. Stand by for missile launch." "No, I deactivated it," he cried. His questions were answered by an unexpected source of radio came in. "Thank you, Snake." It was Miller, or rather, an imposter who had taken the murdered man's identity. The launch preparations are now complete. Nothing could stop Metal Gear now. Master, what's going on? We're very grateful to you. Not only did you bring the key, you just entered the launch code for us as well. What? We weren't able to discover the DARPA chief's code. Even with Mantis' psychic powers, he couldn't read his mind. Then Ocelot accidentally killed him during the interrogation. Snake listened in horror. Miller continued. Without the threat of nuclear strike, our demands would never be met. And we were all getting a little worried. What are you saying? Having Decoy Octopus impersonate the DARPA chief, at first I thought we could get information out of you, Snake. So I had the Decoy Octopus, I forget the exact line. Impersonate the DARPA chief. We were trying to extract information from you, but Foxdie got to him first. God, it's all jumbled up. God damn it. Miller says savagely. Are you saying that this whole thing was fixed? Snake asked through clenched butt cheeks. And it was all to get me to unlock the launch sequence. You mean you had this all planned from the beginning? Just to get me to input the detonation code? You didn't think you made it this far by yourself, did you? Think again. What the fuck? Master, what about you? Are you a spy? What the fuck is this translation, man? Who the hell are you? The other continued as though he had not heard Snake's question. But everything is ready for launch now. Once they get a taste of their new weapon, the White House will break. The president will break. We'll have to hand over the antidote. What the fuck is going on, man? And they'll have nothing on us anymore ever again. Their ace in the hole is useless now. Ace in the hole. The Pentagon's already accomplished what it set out to do with you. It happened right there in that torture chamber. Poor fool. You're the only one who doesn't know. Who are you? I'll tell you everything. If you manage to get to me. Where are you? Very close by. Campbell suddenly broke in. Snake, that's not Master Miller. Campbell, you're too late, the imposter said mockingly. Master Miller's body was just discovered at his home. He's been dead for at least 3 days. I didn't know because I don't remember. Communication, Master Miller was caught. But Mei Ling was saying the transmission was coming from inside the base. Then who are you? Then who is he? Fuck, I forget how it goes in the real script. Whatever. Snake, you've been talking to me, your brother? Liquid! Snake broke off communications and started to run. Metal Gear had already been activated by the time Snake reached it. Liquid was about to climb into the pilot seat when Snake called out to him. The barrel of his SOCOM pointed straight at Liquid. Liquid! Oh, are you going to point a gun at your own brother? Why did you disguise yourself as Master? So that I could manipulate you more easily. Liquid sat conversationally as though the two were discussing the weather. And you must perform quite well, I must say. Snake's indignity was compounded by Liquid's next comment. I'm sure that your masters the Pentagon agree. What the hell are you talking about? Following your orders blindly with no questions asked, you lost your warrior's pride and become nothing more than a pawn, Snake. Rescuing the hostages, stopping Nuke, it was all just a diversion. A diversion. All the Pentagon wanted was for you to come in contact with us. That's what killed the Armstead president and Decoy Octopus. It can't be. Actually, it can. The point was to selectively kill us off and retrieve our extremely expensive genetically engineered corpses, along with Metal Gear. You were sent here so that you could kill us and retrieve Metal Gear undamaged. Now, are you telling me Naomi was working with the Pentagon? They thought she was, but it seemed that Dr. Naomi Hunter was quite as cooperative as they thought. What do you mean? We got a spy working at the Pentagon. He reported that Dr. Naomi Hunter altered the Foxdie virus. Fuck, I don't remember the exact line. But it's better than whatever this shit is. Made some tweaks to the virus right before the mission. But no one knows how or why. I wonder. Shit. I really need... Okay, next time I do this, I'm gonna have the fucking just one script in front of me because this is dog shit. This translation of it is dog shit. Is that what you had Naomi arrested for? To discover why she did what she did? I wonder. Maybe they arrested her to find out the answer to that. No doubt. Very good. It's disappointing that it was nothing more than a run-of-the-mill revenge scheme. But I had no idea she was motivated with such petty revenge. We still don't know what kind of changes she introduced to Foxdie. Liquid fell silent for a moment, then continued. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I've already added a Foxdie vaccine to my list of White House demands. There's a vaccine? Snake asked in surprise. There must be, but that woman is the only one who really knows. Anyway, it might prove to be unnecessary. Why not? You've come in contact with all of us, so we've all been exposed to the virus. It's true that the Armstead president and Octopus were killed by Foxdie, but neither myself nor Ocelot, not to mention you, have shown any signs of infection. A bug in the virus's programming? Who knows, but as long as you're healthy, I'm safe. Oh god, we share the same genetic code after all. So we are twins, yes, but not ordinary twins. We're twins linked by cursed genes. We're the flip side of a counterfeit genetic coin. Les enfants terribles. Liquid's voice grew hoarse with anger. You're fine. You got all the old man's dominant genes. I got all the flow recessive ones. Snake was silent. His father, Big Boss, was a part of the past he wanted to leave behind. A past tainted by the crime of patricide, but Liquid was not finished. What? Everything that was undesirable, I got. Or should I say that I was everything undesirable? What the fuck? Leftover from the creation process was designed to produce you. The only reason I exist is so they could create you. Can you understand what it's like to be garbage since the day you were born? I was the favorite, huh? I'm the dregs. You couldn't begin to understand what it's like starting out life as genetic garbage. The hatred and rage of Liquid's voice shook us and left Snake speechless. But I'm the one father chose. He put me in the back of the truck. Maybe spin in circles and keyford me. Is that why you're so obsessed with Big Boss? Some kind of twisted love? Love? It's hatred. He always told me I was inferior. Now I'll have my revenge. Liquid laughed, mocking Snake's bewilderment. You should understand me, brother. You killed our father with your own hands. You stole my chance for revenge. But I will surpass him. I will... Fuck, I forgot the next word is. I will destroy him. Liquid ended his proclamation by leaping into Metal Gear's cockpit. Snake fired a burst from his SOCOM, but the bullets ricocheted off Metal Gear's armor. I will... what else did he say? I will finish the work Father began. Yeah. Damn, Snake used Liquid's call it out mockingly from the cockpit. Snake, count yourself lucky. You get to die, but the greatest weapon the world has ever seen. It's the least I can do for you, brother. A gift from your brother. Metal Gear, already in activation mode, started to stir. A high-pitched noise, like the whine of a turbo engine, began to sound as Liquid's voice boomed out of the amplifier. I'll give you an advanced showing of what the rest of the world will learn soon. That the 21st century will belong to a devil they don't know. What the fuck? Interesting retranslation. Okay. Metal Gear struck at Snake like a living thing. Its state-of-the-art composite armor was virtually impregnable to all but high-yield explosives like heat, high-explosive anti-tank. But Dr. Emery had advised Snake to take out a radom and knock the sensors offline in a bid for survival. Snake struck again and again, but he was fighting a difficult battle. Not really. Given Metal Gear's immense firepower and agility. Finally, one of Metal Gear's huge feet lashed out towards Snake in a crushing blow. It's time to die, Snake, Liquid called out. The foot hit the floor with a deafening crash. Snake, however, had escaped. Someone had pulled him out of the foot's path at the last second. What? Out of the foot's path? And it hit the floor? That's literally not what happened. What the fuck? Did Agnes Kaku also take some liberties? And what? Snake, hurry! Gray Fox! Snake cried out. The ninja, or rather Gray Fox, launched a fiery arc towards Metal Gear, destroying the radom. The tank froze in confusion for a second, and Snake and the ninja found cover during that brief lull. Fox, why? What do you want from me? I'm a prisoner of death. Only you can free me. Gray Fox replied, his voice clear and sane. Fox, stay out of this. What about Naomi? She's hell-bent on getting revenge for you. Naomi, you're the only one who could stop her, Snake urged, but Gray Fox's reply was discouraging. No, I can't. Why? 'Cause I'm the one who killed her parents. Gray Fox's stark words stunned Snake. I was young then. I couldn't bring myself to kill her too. I felt so bad that I took her with me. But every time I looked at her, I felt her parents' eyes staring back at me. Tell her for me. Tell her for me. Tell her that I was the one who did it. Fuck. We may have looked like a happy little family, but I was terrified every time she looked me in the eye. She would see the truth. What the fuck? Fuck this translation. Many former child soldiers are permanently traumatized by their horrific war experiences. It was possible that Gray Fox's compulsions, whether it be taking his victim orphan child or returning again and again to the battlefield with Big Boss, had its roots in his childhood scars. There you are, Liquid called through Metal Gear's speaker. A concentrated volley of Vulcan cannon fire followed, the rounds closing in on Snake and the ninja. It's almost time to finish this. We're just about out of time, Fox cried. I'll stop him from moving! Fox! Before Snake could stop him, Gray Fox leapt into the open and went for Metal Gear. We could hear the roar of Metal Gear's Vulcan cannon. Gray Fox's reinforced skeleton gave him a faster reflex, and he dodged the volley, but the next second his body had been plucked up by Metal Gear's massive jaw. What? Fox! Snake's shout reverberated throughout the hangar. Metal Gear's engine revved louder. Did they miss the part where it fucking cut off his arm? Okay. Metal Gear's engine revved louder, and Fox's reinforced exoskeleton creaked audibly. How long will his bones hold out? Huh, Snake? Are you going to abandon him? How strong is that exoskeleton of yours? Are you just gonna stand by and watch him die? Liquid taunted, but Fox was far from dead. A cornered fox is one of the most dangerous animals. In the Middle East, we don't hunt foxes, we hunt jackals. Instead of foxhounds, we use royal harriers. Fox, Snake, are you just gonna stand by and watch him die? A cornered fox is more dangerous than a jackal. No, it's one of the most dangerous animals. Laser fire burst from Fox's right arm, and Metal Gear's radome exploded. Liquid was now blind, since Metal Gear's cockpit was completely sealed from outside. They didn't give you a Fox rank for nothing, old comrade. What the fuck? Impressive. You are indeed worthy of the code name Fox, but now you're finished. Liquid's amplified voice called out. He had apparently discarded the cockpit hatch to use his own eyes and ears in lieu of sensors. The next thing we heard was an explosive crash. Was Gray Fox now under Metal Gear's foot? My fear was confirmed by the ominous and unmistakable sound of Fox's reinforced exoskeleton creaking under pressure. At the same time, we heard Fox's gasping voice. Oh my god, I fucking retranslated. Finally, I can finally die, and with you as my witness. After Zanzibar land, they took away the fight from me. Oh my god, it's so bad. Thank god Agnes Kagwa didn't fucking do I'm Just One. They took away the fight from me. I wasn't dead, but didn't feel alive. So futile for such a long time. But it's finally over. What in the shit is this translation, man? Ew. Okay. Neither truly alive, nor truly dead. Fox's voice was down to a whisper now. Snake, we're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at, but at least I always fought what I believed in. Snake, farewell. With a dull crunch, the shitty translation, his reinforcement skeleton finally gave away. Fox! Snake screamed. Liquid laughed. He was a fool! When death is entreated, the battle is decided. It was over the moment he begged for death. He prayed for death, and it found him. He ground Fox's battered corpse underfoot with Metal Gear and bellowed. Do you get it now? You can't protect anyone, not even yourself. Die! Metal Gear's Vulcan cannons roared into action, but with all sensors offline, the fire lacked its previous accuracy. Robbed of his old friend and comrade, Snake gave free rein to his rage, then called Campbell. The less you maneuver a remote control missile, the faster it will fly. Taking up a Stinger missile launcher, he fired at Liquid, sitting exposed in the cockpit. It was a direct hit. Even with the composite armor could not protect against a shot that penetrated into the cockpit itself. His piloting system destroyed, Metal Gear abruptly spun out of control and pitched towards the ground with a deafening screech. A massive explosion followed seconds later. Snake, caught in the blast, was bodily thrown across the hangar and knocked unconscious. Snake was still out cold, but his radio was online. We could hear smaller explosions from the wreck of Metal Gear, and the sound of flames greedily sucking up the leaking fuel. Snake showed no signs of coming around. A few minutes later, the sound of footsteps emerged from the general chaos. It was moving towards Snake. There was a faint murmur. Snake, it's not over yet. It was Liquid's voice. Snake! I yelled into the radio, but Snake did not stir. Isn't there any way to wake him? I asked Richard, but he shook his head. Liquid had reached Snake's side, and to our surprise, picked up Snake's limp body. He started to carry Snake, heading into the direction of Metal Gear's prone form. We listened, helpless in a tense silence. It was Snake's battle. There was next to nothing we could do. Liquid had now climbed onto Metal Gear's back, where he carelessly laid Snake down. He apparently planned to simply wait for his adversary to regain consciousness. So, Liquid said. Snake was still out of action. I know you're listening. You have a radio implant in this one. It was clear Liquid was talking to us. You think you pulled off Fox, eh? Think again. Think again. You're never going to kill me with a thing like that. Never. The knowledge that he was already infected with the killer retrovirus made no difference to Liquid Snake. It was a force of will that commanded respect. You have no idea how excited I am, knowing that you're still out there. Revenge is a candidate that I've been deprived of too many times. The hatred in Liquid's voice was chilling. You, patriots. At that moment, Snake let out a groan. He was starting to surface. He's almost ready. Listen, all of you. When I've settled the score with this one, I'm coming after you next. I'm going to end your miserable lives in a way that'll make even the Reaper's stomachs turn. I look forward to it, Richard murmured starkly. Snake groaned again. He was apparently awake. Sleeping late as usual, eh, Snake? Liquid, you're alive. I won't die. Not while you still live. Too bad. It looks like you're... The Snake say insurrection was a failure. Just because you destroyed Metal Gear doesn't mean I'm done fighting. Liquid had lost none of his confidence. Fighting? What are you really after? A world in which soldiers like us are treated as we once were, as we should be. That was Big Boss's fantasy. It was his dying wish. Liquid exploded at Snake's words. All throughout the Cold War. What? During the times of turbulence. Winnie was young during the Cold War. Oh, fuck, I forget. We were desired. The whole world wanted us, gave us our due. Oh, things are different now. But all the liars and hypocrites running the world. War isn't what it used to be. I don't see where we're at with this shitty translation. You should know that as well as I do. Snake had no reply to Liquid's entreaty, and I wonder what Liquid's wars had found, whether Liquid's wars had found their mark. The prototype warhead will provide me with the leverage to acquire my campaign funds. Campaign? Is Liquid Snake campaigning for... What kind of fucking translation is this, man? After I launch this weapon and get our $1 billion, the funds will make more global acts of terrorism possible. Violence begets violence. What? But in the end, it had to be this way. Conflict will breed conflict. New hatred will arise. Then we'll steadily expand our sphere of influence. But as long as there are people, there will always be war. Snake argued. There's no need to create more. But the question is balance. Father knew what kind of a balance was best. Is that the only reason? Isn't it reason enough for warriors such of us? I don't want that kind of world. Liquid laughed at Snake's dodged refusal. You're lying. Why do you think you're here? You've been lied to, betrayed by your own team, but you still wouldn't abandon the mission. Why? Can we abandon the shitty translation instead? I don't know. How? You lie. Why are you here then? Why do you continue to follow your orders while your superiors betray you? Why did you come here? Snake could not answer. I'll tell you then. You enjoy all the killing. That's why. Are you denying it? Haven't you already killed many of my comrades? But that was... I watched your face while you did it. Liquid laughed in contempt. You don't have to deny it. We were created to be that way. Created? It was all of the encouragement Liquid needed to reveal the details of a secret project known as Les Enfants Terribles. What the fuck? It was the 1970s. The US had not yet awoken from the nightmare of the Vietnam War when a plan was hatched by key figures in the government to artificially create the ideal soldier. The man selected to serve as the genetic template for the project was the most famous living mercenary of the time, Big Boss. Big Boss was, however, incapable of reproducing as a result of past war injuries. See, they got that right. As a result, his body cells were harvested for a cloning attempt. In addition to the existing analog cloning protocol, the program incorporated the so-called Super Baby method. The Super Baby method. Super Baby technique involves carefully dividing a fertilized egg whose nucleus had been switched with that of the donor cell. The result is usually 8 zygotes which are then implanted into the surrogate's uterus. 6 of the embryos are strategically aborted over a period of time in order to boost the growth of the remaining 2. You and I were originally octuplets. Snake was clearly taken aback. The other 6 of our brothers were sacrificed to create us. We were accomplices in murder before the day we were even born. So it was the 2 of us. 2 zygotes that share the same DNA. But there was one more sacrifice to be made. But they weren't finished yet. One of the embryos was engineered to manifest the full potential of its genetic makeup, at the expense of the other one, which was purposely relegated to the bottom of the curve. You are what you are, saw the Snake, thanks to the death and deprivation of your brothers. God. Liquid surveyed the stunned Snake and smiled. But you and I aren't his only children. What? The genome soldiers? They too are the product of numerous sacrifices. The only difference, they too carry our father's DNA, but they're different. They're digital. Liquid went on to tell an astonishing story. The Human Genome Project concluded late last century. The Les Infanterie Project and the intensive study of Big Boss's genetic sample had led researchers to many of the secrets of the so-called soldier genes. Isolated traits for initiative, discipline, other tactically desirable characteristics have been secretly integrated into the genetic structure of the next generation special forces soldiers. Does it say they were bred from her father's DNA? I wasn't even fucking reading it because as soon as I saw it, I just switched to the other line and just went, yeah, they were not fucking bred. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, this is bad. This part is bad, man. All those commanders you murdered on this base were your brothers. The genome soldiers. Incomplete creatures, certainly, forcibly grafted with a piece of Big Boss's genetic sequence, but still family. They too are our brothers and sisters. They share in the family dysfunction too. Their lives also cost someone dearly. How so? Human experiments. Liquid hissed angrily. According to Liquid, the military had secretly started treating its men with the soldier gene when the 1991 Gulf War broke out. The unexplained Gulf War syndrome among the returning personnel was apparently one of the gene therapy's unfortunate side effects. That means that those Gulf War babies born to vets are... Snake asked, stunned. Exactly, our earliest siblings. And the next generation special forces were the finished product? Finished? And Phantom Pain was the finished product? Finished? Hardly. It's defective. We all are. On a path to extinction, if you will. What'd you say? Have you ever heard of the asymmetry theory? There's a natural tendency towards left-right asymmetry. On the other hand, species that run out of genetic diversity are on the path to extinction and are on the path to extinction start showing complete symmetry. That's what's happening to us, to the genome soldiers and us. Snake stared at Liquid in bleak shock. Every one of us is dying on a genetic level. The question is when the decline will start. That's why I need our father's body, to get some answers. You expect me to believe, Snake asked, that you demanded Big Boss's body so you could save yourself and the genome soldiers? Siblings start out life competing, but they always band together against outside threats. What do you think that is? Altruism among blood relatives is a response to natural selection. It's called the selfish gene theory. Liquid waited for Snake to respond, but the latter said nothing. It's because they share your genes, and by helping them, the chances of your genes making it into the next generation are bettered. Natural selection favors nepotistic species. The instinct to help our own kind is an inherited trait. Are you telling me your genes are ordering to help these genome commandos? Snake said skeptically. But Liquid agreed in a reverential tone. You can't fight your genes, it's fate. We were born with the sole purpose of recreating our father's DNA in its base and most ideal incarnations. That is why I will follow what my genes tell me. And then I'm going to go beyond. I will follow my destiny and surpass it. I can break my own biological curse, and that's why I'm going to kill you, Solid Snake. He spoke quietly, but it was clear that he meant every word. He suddenly called out in a different tone. Look behind you! Meryl! Snake exclaimed. Meryl was apparently lying behind Snake. I guess that she had been brought here before Liquid carried Snake onto the roof. The roof? Is she alive? I'm not sure. She was alive a few hours ago. Poor girl kept calling your name. Stupid woman. Falling in love with someone who doesn't even have a name. I have a name. No, you don't. And no past and no future. That's the way it is for us, Liquid shouted. The only thing we do have are instructions written in our father's genomes. Let Meryl go. After we settled things between us. We're just about out of time. You talking about Foxeye? No, the Pentagon. It seems that the DoD came to a decision when they heard about Metal Gear's destruction. They're not even interested in a Bonder report at this point. They won't even need a BDA. Ask your Shadow Campbell if you want. He likes to listen, doesn't he? Nice. Snake Shadow Campbell. Snake raised Campbell on the radio. Colonel, can you hear me? I'm here. What's the Pentagon up to? You better tell me, Colonel. The Defense Secretary personally taking control of this mission is in his way by AWACS. What for? To bomb the place. Campbell replied bitterly. What? That's not even the bad news. A bomber just took off from Galena Air Force Base. It's carrying B-61-13 surface-piercing nuclear bombs. Christ! Metal Gear's already been destroyed. Snake raised his voice. Doesn't the Defense Secretary know that? He knows, but because of Naomi's betrayal, he no longer has any faith in Foxeye's effectiveness. Your taking out Metal Gear means that the threat of nuclear strike has been removed, and he's free to ensure a direct and complete cover-up of the whole affair. By blowing up all the evidence and everyone who does anything sky-high with a nuclear bomb. Snake finished angrily. Campbell's next words were unexpected. Don't worry, Snake. I'll halt the airstrike. What? I might only be a figurehead here, but I'm still official in command of this mission. If I issue an order to delay the strike, it would confuse the chain of command and at least give you some time to escape. But Colonel, if you do that... Richard called one of his men over and muttered an order. There was little doubt that it was for Campbell's arrest. Snake and Campbell, ignorant of the room full of ears who were listening in on their exchange, were still talking. Colonel, if you do that, it's alright, Snake. You should know something. There was a top secret internal investigation being conducted into Foxhound these past few months. Meryl was transferred out to Shadow Moses the day of the insurrection as a hostage to ensure my cooperation, as a way of manipulating me. Those bastards! Snake broke off in disgust. Now go, Snake. Are you sure about this? It'll be bad for you. I'm sure, and this way, I get to keep the things that are really important that I would otherwise lose. Now go, Snake. Colonel, alright. I'm putting in an order to halt the strike. There's a point in order to... What are you doing? Campbell gasped. It seemed that Richard's men were trying to restrain him. The only thing that we could hear over the radio were gunshots and unintelligible noise. I was once again a helpless spectator of life or death struggle. Mei Ling burst in abruptly, as though she seized the microphone. Snake! Mei Ling! What happened to the Colonel? I don't believe this! What happened? Snake the Colonel! Mei Ling's voice was lost in the shower of static before she could reveal more. Instead, an unfamiliar voice started to speak. Roy Campbell has been relieved of duty. This is the Secretary of Defense, Jim Houseman. Put the Colonel back on. I won't. He's been placed under arrest for the crime of high treason and for leaking top secret information. Ridiculous. Yes, he was a ridiculous man. He truly believed that he was in command of this operation. You, Snake was seething. Houseman went on nonchalantly. The nuclear strike will go as forward as planned. The sea will take care of what little there is left. It's what the president wants. The president ordered this? The president is a busy man. I have complete authority here. How are you going to explain a nuclear attack on the US to the media? Don't worry, we're prepared of a cover story. We'll simply say that the terrorists exploded a nuclear device. You'll be killing everyone here. The Genome Army, the scientists, everyone. Donald is already dead. Houseman suddenly said with genuine sorrow in his voice. So, you didn't plan on killing the DARPA chief after all? Snake asked. He was my friend. And the rest of the poor bastards stranded here aren't? So to hell with them? Is that it? And you could care less about what happens to everyone else, huh? That depends. If you transfer the contents of the optical disc over to me, there may be room for negotiation. What disc? Snake feigned ignorance, but Houseman was not so easily put off. The disc, Metal Gear's test data. Donald was supposed to bring it back. I don't have it. That's unfortunate, Houseman said calmly. The fact remains that the two of you are a liability. You belong to an age no one cares to go back to, and you have the potential to needlessly embarrass this great nation. Now, you cannot be permitted to ever leave that island. Take the time until the airstrikes catch up, then rest in peace. You are a ghost of the Cold War after all. The transmission ended. There's no way out for us. Let's finish this before the airstrike. I heard Liquid laugh as he approached Snake. We'll settle the score before the cavalry arrives. Snake rose to his feet. You've taken everything from me, Liquid said, and I will reclaim it all, including my rightful biological heritage, right here. What? Two snakes closed in on one another. The final battle was about to begin. Snake and Liquid had engaged each other in a fierce hand-to-hand combat, but Richard had other things to attend to. He had one of his men up on the radio channel. Yes, what is it? I realized with surprise that the person he had called was none other than the Secretary of Defense, Jim Houseman. An airstrike was an unwise decision. Richard sounded displeased. With a nuclear-armed stealth bomber airborne, a complete cover-up is no longer an option. They are not happy with us, with this. It's the only way to destroy evidence. The result will bear out the correctness of my decision. There will be no results. I've already aborted the airstrike. How dare you? Houseman started to roar, then suddenly petered out. He no doubt had remembered that powers that be that stood behind Richard. What do you intend to do then? He asked with barely suppressed rage. There is another viable way to salvage the situation. Make me take the fall? I don't think so. Houseman's voice shook with fury. Richard sighed exaggeratedly. You don't think so? It seems, Mr. Secretary, that Colonel Campbell is not the only one who truly believed he had any real say in this mission. What are you saying? I heard a sound of scuffling on the other end. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Get your hands off me! Houseman had apparently been restrained. It was exactly the same scenario that had played out during Campbell's arrest. You have several choices, Richard explained with something resembling pity. It's up to you which ending this particular story has. I myself would suggest a quiet retirement from public life. You'll pay for this, Ames, I swear to God. Houseman spat out as he struggled vainly against his captors. Personally, I don't condone rough measures. I hope you'll come to the same decision. Richard ended the call. Well, yeah, it happens to Campbell, and it happens to Houseman, and it happens to Ames. They all get in trouble in a chain. The transmission from Shadow Moses was still active. Liquid's dying scream tore through the speakers. Looks like things are wrapping up nicely over there, Richard murmured. Richard cleared all of the personnel out of the study. We were now alone. I could hear Snake and Meryl over the wires. It seemed that he had succeeded in rescuing her in time. Now the question is, what am I going to do with you? Richard said as he turned away from the radio. The time had come for me to make my move. I walked to my computer. This machine has been recording everything that went on in the study and relaying it to a remote location. Once there, the data was immediately backed up on an optical disc. It was no bluff. It was just a more covert version of a real-time remote conferencing system. Because of my work, I frequently must acquire information from such unsavory types as black market arms dealers and mafia members who specialize in plutonium smuggling. Recordings were my standard insurance policy. I already sent a message to the collocation administrator. He'll give the disc to my media contact if he can't get in touch with me by a certain time. That had been mail I'd secretly sent from my PDA earlier. If anything happens to me, the contents of the disc will be all over the world. But Richard wasn't fazed. I started to feel apprehensive as he calmly lit another cigarette. You mean this disc? He took out a shining optical disc and from inside his jacket pocket and slid it into my PC's drive. A few quick clicks of the mouse and the playback started. I stared at the slightly grainy footage, horrified. The audio seemed overly loud in the silent room. You should be hearing from him soon. You clear how to use the radio? Richard's voice was rasping the playback. It was definitely the data I had secretly collected and sent out. How? You shouldn't underestimate me, Richard said as he ejected the pocket to the disc. Everything in this house has been vetted and monitored since the operation started. Nothing got in or out without my knowing about it, including electronic signals. That email you sent from the bathroom never got to its destination. It seemed right through me. With that realization, I felt strength leaving my body. The game was up. But even if you had managed to get this data out into the world, that wouldn't have guaranteed your safety. No one would have believed yet another conspiracy theory, at least of all the press. Your people would have made sure of that, I'm sure. Instead of answering, Richard stuck out a cigarette and slid his right hand inside his jacket. There was an awkward bulge there. There was an awkward bulge there. The clean line of his tailored jacket. It was where he kept his gun holstered. The cold sweat trickled down my back. I was slowly backing away from Richard, as I did not even realize the fact until my back hit the wall. There was no way out. Are you really prepared to kill me? I could not hide the tremor in my voice. You should know the answer to that, he sighed quietly, looking me straight in the eye. Then he pulled his hand out from under his jacket, and I instinctively shut my eyes. But even after what felt like an eternity, the muffled shot and the pain I was expecting did not come. I wearily opened my eyes and saw what was in his hand. It was not a gun, but a disc. Everything you've ever wanted to know about Foxdie. Richard walked up to me and placed the disc in my hand. As I said, a recording of what took place in this room won't guarantee your safety. There's no solid proof, just talk. It can easily be denounced as a fabrication and cover-up. But the Foxdie data is a different story, he continued. This disc contains everything about the project, from its origins to the names of every individual involved. As long as you have this as insurance, they won't be able to touch you. Why, Richard? He did not answer my question. Wait, what? Abe's face. You better get out of here quickly. Your car is just out back. What about you? That's not something you need to worry about. But you don't need me, Nastasha, and I have things to take care of. Why are you doing this? I asked again. You'll figure it out someday. Do what you have to do, alright? He suddenly held me close and put his lips on mine. As we broke apart after a long kiss, he whispered in my ear, I just wanted to do this again, just one last time. Then he gently eased me away. Now go, hurry! There was gravity in his voice that allowed only one response. I nodded and sped out of the room. That was the last I ever saw of Richard Ames. After I fled from California, I went into hiding. There has been no sign of pursuit for now. The terrorist incident on Shadow Moses Island came to a conclusion with the destruction of Metal Gear and the death of Liquid Snake. So, Ames let Nastasha go, and he gave her proof of the whole thing as well. And that's why he got in trouble with the Patriots. That's why he gets sent to the Big Shell, taken hostage, and killed by the Patriots, basically. I think they must have given him like a promotion or something, because he was a major at this point, and then he's a colonel on the Big Shell. But yeah, they probably tricked him into going there. Even gave him basically a fake promotion, I guess, just to have him killed in the exercise. indirectly. Well, kind of directly, but as part of the M1 simulation. It's crazy that Ames was behind the scenes the whole time at M1, and he ends up being the DARPA chief's or Decoy Octopus's stand-in in M2 for letting Nastasia go. United States government, however, has not yet officially acknowledged the incident. The roster of the dead included Liquid Snake, Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf, Decoy Octopus, and Vulcan Raven. Revolver Ocelot's body was never recovered, but his personnel file was closed with the notation "Missing in Action." Fox Sound had, in effect, been decimated. The survivors from the Next Generation Commando unit were all removed to the East Air Force Base in New Hampshire, ostensibly for training. As far as I know, they remain prisoners to this day. Oh, all the Genome soldiers got put in prison? Damn. Somewhere out there's a fucking spin-off about a Genome soldier breaking out of prison and revealing the truth. Those poor bastards. The government has repeatedly denied allegations of genetically engineered super soldiers, but rumors that the research continues remain persistent. The deaths of Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, Kenneth Baker of Armstech ended the development of a new Metal Gear. Metal Gear Rex unit itself had been all but completed under Hal Emmerich's leadership, but my source at Lawrence Livermore indicated that the Railgun Warhead delivery system had not been fully operational. Apparently, there had been some serious issues with the railgun's targeting accuracy. This was no doubt the reason Baker had entrusted Snake with the exercise data, and Jim Houseman, the Secretary of Defense, had so aggressively pursued its whereabouts. The data is now lost, and the development program had been closed down. I dare to dream that the new nuclear delivery system will never see the light of day. A few days after the incident, I heard on the news that Houseman had shot himself. The suicide was attributed to a temporary nervous breakdown related to job stress. He suicided himself with 2 gunshots to the back of the head. Supporting statements from family and subordinates were widely aired. The airstrike order for Shadow Moses was glossed over as an unfortunate evidence of the late defense secretary's unraveling mental state. Yeah, they just fucking blamed everything on Houseman being crazy and killing himself conveniently. I remember Houseman's words from the final hours of the mission and thought I knew what had really happened. He had refused to take the fall and paid for the defiance of his life. Same thing for Ames. The record of the Shadow Moses incident and the Foxdie data disk Richard gave me are still under my vigilant guard. The Foxdie program data covers Naomi's careful analysis of the unauthorized reconfiguration she made to the virus. The information showed that Snake was indeed one of the targets for the deadly retrovirus, but the incubation period had been changed to a wildcard value. Oh, okay. Even Naomi herself did not know when the virus would awaken within Snake. It must have been the best revenge she could think of, condemning him to live in a fearful limbo. I mean, isn't that the same for everybody? Colonel Roy Campbell was released after the Defense Secretary's own arrest and is once again enjoying his retirement. Mei Ling also made it safely out of the mission and is back in academia. Dr. Hal Emmerich did not return to Armstech following his rescue from Shadow Moses. His whereabouts are unknown, but there is some indication that he made his way to England, where he has family members. Snake and Merrill appear to have successfully made it off Shadow Moses Island. I could, however, find no trace of them. I hope that the same is true for those who have an interest in seeing them silenced. Naomi Hunter was formally taken into custody after the incident's conclusion. 3 weeks later, as she was undergoing debriefing in a certain facility, she escaped. She has not been heard of since. Officials were closed-mouthed about the circumstances of the escape, but inquiries into other quarters elicited the fact that someone had broken Naomi out of the base. I knew of only one person who could have breached the base's tight security and successfully led someone to freedom. Rescue Naomi's spin-off game when and just 1.5 or 1.2 Rescue the Naomi spin-off. They talk about it and just for a second, but yeah. And then there was a matter of Richard Ames. I called in a favor and had an inquiry made to the DIA about one Major Richard Ames. Agency's response was that there was no DIA personnel fitting that name and description. Buying my safety and freedom had been a costly act for Richard. It was then that I decided to go public with what I knew. By exposing this conspiracy, I may be putting myself in renewed danger, but I am through with being a spectator, an objective bystander. The powerlessness I felt watching Snake's solitary war on Shadow Moses had been a bitter wake-up call. This time, I am determined to make a stand. This is my war now, to tell the truth about what happened on that island. That is my responsibility and privilege as a survivor, and a cause for which I am prepared to give my life. Woo, okay, we did it. We read everything. Imagine reading. It's been probably quite a few years since I read all this, especially on stream. I forgot a couple things about it. The most shocking fact of all, that Ames was fucking Naomi. Ames and Naomi were seeing each other. And later there's a snake tale where Ames is also with Jennifer, the other hostage in the hostage room. So yeah, Ames, and he was Nastasia's husband. So Ames gets around, it seems. So basically what happens after this is that Nastasia unofficially joins philanthropy and helps Snake Nauticon. So do Mei Ling and maybe someone else. Mei Ling, Nauticon, Snake,